see what happens. And if you like the PowerPoint thing better, I can certainly switch over to that. I have some of that anyway. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, so I think we ended on question number 34, so let's start with question number 35, right? Everybody with me, is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. So this is one more, I think. Yeah. All right. Question number 35. An amount of $50,000 is invested at a rate of return of 12%. All right, so it's a TPR problem. I thought we did 34, no? Yeah, because we did the gable roof, right? Yeah, building 29 by 34 by 17 with a gable roof of 8 feet high. We did that one.
Page 460.
Oh, thank you. Good to know. Yes. All right. So this is, I says, TPR question, right? So TPR. It frantically downloaded the whiteboard today to make sure that I had that. All right. So the amount of $50,000 is invested rate of return 12% times 12%. Why are you stopping? Why are you out there? Oh, this is going to be great. Hold on. Okay, now it doesn't want to work. Okay, whiteboard died. Can you guys still see me?
Yes, we can.
Am I froze?
You are not froze.
Okay. All right. Terribly sorry about this, people. All right, so my computer has froze entirely. This is just what I know. Okay, I may have to sign out and sign back in again, people. So if that should happen, just give me a second.
Anas is only giving you 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. Yes, I know I got a limit. I can't get my cursor to work. I can't, nothing.
It went down to 5 minutes now.
Oh, yeah.
He's eating up 5 minutes right now.
The later it gets, right? The later it gets in the class.
He's frozen, right?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
If he leaves and has to come back, if we have to re-sign in too.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so, because he's left before and it didn't do that.
Okay. Back, let's tell him we did all the problems and we're done with the math.
I'm sold. That sounds great.
It's so strange. It shows me as the host. Oh, no, Mark's back.
You must be the one that talks the most? I thought it was me, but maybe it's you.
Well, everyone knows me that talks the most, I like to think, anyway. I take it you can hear me. All right.
Yep.
I think you can see me as well, right? Is this camera any better than the one we've been using? This is the one on the computer itself. Is that any better?
I don't see you.
You
Does
don't see-
anyone see him?
I see him.
Okay, then I'll look for
I
him.
see you. It's about the same as the old one.
Only him.
Okay, just curious. You know,
Yeah.
of course, the computer cost me a shit ton of money, and so now I gotta make sure it works. Okay, hold on. Let me try to share the screen. Bring everything down. We're going to have some limitations here, but that's all right. All right, this is where I left off, right? When everything went to hell. Everybody see that? Yeah, all right. All right, so let's see. We're doing $50,000, right? And 12% return, so that's times 12%. I got to change the pen. Okay, times 12%, right? It's a TPR question. Remember that. So nothing to it. So we take the $50,000, multiply that by 12%. What do we come up with? D, $6,000. Ta-da! Right? Not that tough. All right, now that I got this kind of working, let me clear this. Didn't work. All right, 36. Monthly interest on a loan with 9.25 annual rate is 65.53. What's the loan amount? Okay, so 65.53. 65.53 times 12, right? Because we need an annual amount. We gotta make sure that we're dealing with the same units of measure. So that gives me 786.36. 786.36. That's my part. We know that our rate is 9 1/4, right? So divide 9.25%. And that's the answer was D, 6,000. I'm going to try something, and it could screw everything up. Okay. I'm going to screw things up yet. Okay. All right. So that makes sense. Everybody with me on that one? Good, bad, indifferent? I'll take indifferent at this point, believe me.
Excuse me, you said the answer is D, right?
D, yes, 6,000.
Thank you.
If you have an old version of the book,
Oh,
if you have an older version of the book, it's A, 6,000. But either way, it's 6,000.
What
Okay.
number are you talking about?
I'm sorry, I had moved on, hadn't I? The answer's D. It's still D. 36 is D. I moved on. I apologize. 36 is still D. As you can see, I'm very flustered today. I've been flustered all day long. This is driving me crazy, and there you are.
And you're just rounding up, I'm assuming, because I did not get 85,000.
It says what is the loan amount rounded to the nearest $100?
Okay.
Right? So says the problem.
Okay, so
Look who's back. Okay, come on.
so 35 and 36, they're both D because you said 6,000
Yes.
for 35,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden, okay, I lost translation there. Thank you.
I'm supposed to be. Well, okay. 37. I'm going to get rid of this. 37. What percentage of profit would Aaron make if you paid $20,500 for a lot, built a home on the lot that cost $133,000, and then sold the lot and the house together for $194,550? Round your answer to the nearest percent. Okay. So if I take the, what was it, 153.5, right? 153,500. That's the 20,500 for the lot and 133,000 for the house. Right? Remember, this is in a profit and loss question. The original amount is always the. Okay, I'm back on another camera. The original amount before profit and loss is the total, and the amount after profit and loss is the part. All right, so we do this a couple of different ways. If we add those two together, and he sold them for $194,550. Now remember, it's the percentage of profit. So when you do this problem, you're going to come up with 127%, right? But the percentage of profit is a 27%. Shannon, how you feel? Yeah, I figure.
Like I haven't slept in 3 days.
But that's all you've been doing, I assume, is sleeping, right?
No, I think it's having the reverse effect on me.
Oh.
Medication. So
Well, I hope that you were doing something fun when you messed up your knee. So that's the best I can say.
I wish it was a better story.
What's that? Sorry?
I wish it was a better story.
Oh, you were like chasing a cat or something, right?
No, I was skiing, but
Yeah, well, that's a good story. That's a good
first
story.
25 feet, not that great.
Oh. Well, at least you killed the whole day. All righty. 38. Everybody okay with 37? This is just a different way to do it, okay? I'm going to show you a different way to do it. So the numbers stay the same, obviously. So I got 153.5. And then if I just took the amount of profit, right? The amount of profit is $41,050. If I do it that way, then I come up with 27%. That's the percentage of profit. Okay? Either way works. Come up with the same answer. Okay, let's move on. Buyer is purchasing a fourplex. Take a guess. How many you think are involved in a fourplex? Go ahead, take a guess. Very good, people. Four. Oh, Italy's, you were right on top of that one, buddy. And it's closing on November 4th. So each apartment rents for $875. As of November 1st, one apartment is vacant. Ooh, that's where they get you right there, babies. That's where they get you. So $875 times 3, right? Because one apartment is vacant. Okay. I don't know why I put that line there. It doesn't need to be there. Compute the rent proration through the day of closing. All right, so right now in the seller's hands is this amount, right? However, the buyer owns the property from November 5th to November 30th, which is 26 days. You with me so far? Capiche? As my mother might say. I divide that by 30 days, and I come up with a per diem of $87.50. So the buyer is entitled to be reimbursed $22.75.
The 87.50 came from the 26.25 divided by 30.
Yep.
Okay.
Very good, Maria. All right, does that make sense? Like intellectually, anyway, does it make sense, right? The seller got all the money, but the buyer has lived in the property for this amount of time, so the buyer is entitled to get the money for that amount of time. Did I confuse it more?
I'm confused.
Okay, hold on.
I think it's when you're skipping a step and computing it in your head. We're not like
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
you combine the numbers and then we're like, where the hell did he get that number?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Because, and the sad truth is that, because I do this, I've done it a million times, and so I get it. And so I do tend to skip this stuff. So, all right, let's go back. So 875, right? There's 3 apartments, and each one has paid its rent. So the total amount of rent that has been paid for the month of November is $26.25. How we doing so far? Capiche so far? All right, we're going to divide that by 30 because there's 30 days in November. That's going to give us a per diem amount of $87.50. Now, we're going to break the month into 2 parts. We got November 1st through the 4th. That's when the seller owned the property, right? And from November 5th through the 30th, that's when the buyer owned the property. Right on? So far, so good? All right. Right now, the seller right here has all of the rent money. All of this is in the seller's hot little hands. So far, so good? But the buyer has owned the property for this amount of time. It's a thick-ass line right there. So the buyer is entitled to the rent money for that amount of time. That amount of time is 26 days. Okay? 26 days times the per diem amount, $87.50. Tells us that the buyer is entitled to $22.75. Make sense? Everybody okay with that? All right. Let me move on. Hold on, I just got to do one thing here. I continue to lose my cursor. Oh, that's why.
Can you go slowly on the next one? Because those are the ones I get confused on, the income ones.
Probably not. I'll do my best.
Try.
I'll do my best, but probably not. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'll try. Sure. Okay. Next one. Income producing property. All right. So that makes this a net operating income problem, right? So I got net operating income is my part, my present value or whatever, and my cap rate. That's how we do net operating income problems. Okay. So far, so good? So far, so good? Okay. Net operating income has a annual gross income of 62.5 and annual monthly expenses of 1530. Okay, so now I got two different units of measure. So I got an annual income of 62.5. Okay. And I've got a monthly expenses of 1530. So I have to take the 1530 times 12, right? Because this is an annual number right here. So I got to make that 1530 into an annual number as well. And that gives us $18,360 minus 18,360. How that? So far, so good? Okay. So I subtract the 18,360 from the 62.5, and that gives me my net operating income, right? Net, gross, less expenses is the net. All right. So in this case, my net then is 44,140. Okay. So apparently it's the blue pen. That's the issue. And I'm froze up again. How does this happen? Okay, apparently there's a blue pen issue. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see me?
We can also see you.
Yep.
All you guys are frozen on me and my thing doesn't work anymore. Again.
Class is over.
No, it's not, damn it.
Sounds good.
It's not over.
Laura, you called it. All right, guys.
If
Goodbye, everybody.
If I make quote Animal House, it's not over until I say it's over.
Oh, so Mark said it's over. Good night, guys.
Get out of here, Nas. It's over for you, pal.
We should get
All
a
right.
free pass on the math.
Hey, listen, if only. You have a free pass on my math. I don't know what that's going to do for you. All
We should
right.
just go to happy hour.
I'm all right with that, too.
Happy hour.
All right, stand by. I'm going to have to do this again. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to reboot it again. It's just not going to work for me. This is nuts. All right, somebody remind me not to use the blue pen.
So when he comes back, everybody agrees that we get
Not
on our exam and on his exam, and we all get certification.
When he comes back, we're all not here. No.
I would settle for passing grade from this class, but you know.
I would settle for him taking all the math problems out of his exam. That's fair.
Yeah, but then we got to take that state test and we'll all be screwed.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think we might be anyway.
I think we are going to be. The happy hour idea. I wish it was nice out and we could all just go meet somewhere in a park or something and just do class there. To what?
It's, that's what I heard, that it's out 4 months or so.
Still.
Wow.
That's the state test. Yeah, that's what.
We're going to forget everything.
Do you guys already have sponsoring brokers?
No.
Nope.
I do. Me and Shannon do.
Because we need to have that before we can actually even take the state test, right?
I thought we have to have the certificate from this class before you can even sign up for a broker.
That's all valid. Yeah. The reason I know, because somebody just went to the class from a different session, and they were trying to sign up for the exam.
Yeah, Shannon and I have a friend that's how we're doing it. But I know what you're saying. That's
Because you have to
a
actually,
requirement.
the sponsoring broker is actually who you're going to be working for. Correct?
also heard that afterwards, if you, hi, Mark, I see you're back.
Good, okay.
Someone just asked if the sponsoring brokers who we're going to be working for, and I just heard that if we switch, like if you leave that broker and go to work for another, you have to how does that go, Mark? You have to redo it through the state or something?
No, you have to switch your license over to the new broker, and there's a fee for doing so, like $25 or something for switching your license over. But it's absolutely doable, yes.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna try and share my screen again. I'm gonna use something else to do math, and we'll see if that works. Yeah, that may be a little better. Okay, so I got the little Microsoft Paint program up there. Can everybody see that okay? I don't know how well this is going to work when we try and do the math, but I'll give it a shot. Hopefully it'll work better than the last thing did anyway. All right, so where was I? I'm really sorry about this, guys. As you can see, I'm struggling here, but I will certainly do my best to get us where we need to be. All right, so anyway, so we had the 62,500. And we subtracted from that the annual expenses of 18,360. And that gave us 44,140. Right, that's my net operating income. Right, and since when we talk about cap rates over here, the cap rate is 10% in this case, right? When we talk about cap rates are always annual. So let's deal with annual numbers. Right here, I got the annual amount of income, and I had to convert the monthly expenses to annual expenses. So I made this into annual expenses. So my net operating income is 44,140, right? I divide that by 10%. What do I get? 44,14. Sorry, I went in the wrong direction. 441,400. So that's how much your building is worth. Maybe a little better. Okay. Well, that sucks. That would be a better way to clear the screen than that. That's not going to work. Okay. Try it that way.
What if you just go to new?
Let me give that a shot. I'm easy. Okay. Thank you. All right. So 44,140 divided by 10%, 441,000 B. All right. The new house and lot together cost $565. They cost $565. So that's our original value. Our original value is always the total. Of the total price, the lot was estimated to be $130. That means nothing. Okay, that would be important if this was what do you call that deduction thing question? But it means nothing here. Amortization. No, not amortization. Depreciation. If this was a depreciation question, that would be meaningful. But as we read it through, we'll see it's not. Buyer held the property for 8 years. Means nothing. If average market prices of comparable properties in the area increased by 32% over that period, what would the total value of the property at the end of the 8 years? All right, so again, in a TPR question, the original amount is always the total, so 565. The question is, what's our rate here? Remember, it's increased by 32%. So what did the seller get? They got all their money back, 100%, plus 32%. Okay, and that gives us our part, which is always the amount after profit or loss.
You said par is what again?
The part is always the amount after profit or loss. Right, so if we're in a profit and loss question, the part is always the amount after profit or loss, and the total is always the original price.
So, Mark,
Yep.
what I did was that I took the total 565 and I multiplied by 32, and I got 188, and then I added that into the original price to get 745.
Does that work for you?
Yeah,
There you go.
but I don't want it to be a fluke, though. Is that a real?
So I would suggest then, I agree with you, I would suggest that you do it my way.
Fair enough.
Listen, I only say that because, this is the way that I know the state wants it done. So if you do it the way the state wants, you can't go wrong for the state.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Bad answer, but the only one I got.
Question. Does
Yeah.
this original price equals total? The gray is the percentage. Does that only apply to this type of problem? Like the one we just did?
No.
To the whole math?
In the TPR formula, right, we use it for different things, right? So in a net operating income question, the net operating income is always the part. Okay, in a profit and loss question, the part is always the amount after profit or loss. Okay, and so the present value to property, I'm sorry, that's not true. In a net operating income question, the value of the property is always the total. And in profit and loss questions, the total is always the original price. Okay.
Wait.
Waiting.
Just keep that there for 1 second, just so I want to screenshot that.
Can you one more time?
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad somebody saw it at least. Thank you. What was the question? There was not a question?
Can you just say it one more time?
Sure. I'm going to do a little different. Hold on. I'll do a little different. Okay. So in the net operating income, right? Net operating income is always the part. Okay. The value of the property is always the total. And the cap rate is the rate. In profit and loss questions, excuse me, the amount after profit and loss, it's not a word. The amount after profit and loss is always the part. The original amount paid, right, is always the total. And if it's a profit question, then the rate is always going to be 100% plus however the amount of the percentage of profit. Want to screenshot that too? Want to make sure you remember me fondly. All right, good. Let's put it into practice. All right, now these are some, like the one that we're going to do now, we did way early on. All right, we did this way early on. Let's see how much you remember. The seller received at the time of closing a check for $121,600. They paid a 7% brokerage commission. They had to pay $31,000 in closing costs and $135,700 loan payoff. They had to pay you a 7% commission. So what's our rate, right? Listen, we're talking in this problem, you can see by this problem, right? This is how much the seller got. They got 121.6 plus they got 31,000 that they had to pay out, right? And they got 135.7 that they had to pay out. So they got 288,300. Now they had to pay you a 7% commission. So how much did they get in terms of percentage? How much percentage of the total price did they get on this property? They got 93%, right? Because they had to pay you 7%. So the question,
It says after paying a brokerage commission.
correct.
So isn't it just basic addition and 288 isn't the answer? Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, they want to know what the total
Hairdresser, what do I know?
was. No, not at all. They want to know the total sales price, right? So it can't be the total sales price because they had to pay you 7% commission. These amounts right here don't take into account your 7% commission. Capiche?
Because after paying a 7%, maybe I'm just not reading it right. Is
That's
that what it
correct.
is?
So they had to pay a 7% commission, right? And they had to pay this, and they had to pay that, and they got this. So what was the total sales price? If the total sales price was 288.3, they didn't pay you any commission, right? Trust me.
Having to push buttons. I thought that the 7% brokerage commission, the broker pays me, doesn't it?
Yes. However, they want to know how much you had to sell this property for in order for this guy to come out with 121.6, 31,000 plus 135.7 plus you getting 7%.
So in this, I think, question, you are the seller, not the realtor.
Right.
So you're answering as a seller.
The question is, how much did the house sell for? So take that 288.3, divide it to 93%, and what do you come up with?
So
Very good, very good, very good. Go ahead.
a quick question.
Uh-huh.
I've noticed there are a couple of scenarios where they're trick answers. So for example, 288.3 is one of the answers.
Yep.
And we're going to see that in real
Yep.
life
Yep.
exams. Okay.
Yep. Count on that. Because, that's what they do, right? They're going to put those three numbers together and you're going to go, yes, 288, 283. Look, I got it. It's right there. It's an answer. No, it's not. It did
You can't
take
count on me failing this.
Listen, all we're trying to do is figure out, in order for you to make that 7% commission, and in order for the seller to come out with 288.3, how much do they have to sell the property for? Right? And the answer is 310. I think I just saw a light bulb come on. You didn't?
Yes, you know what I did? I was reading the question as the 7% commission was the 31,000.
Yeah, no.
So I just had, okay, I'm so sorry to take all that time, you guys. You all
Okay.
know
That's fine.
I'm
Listen,
so sorry.
I doubt seriously that you were the only one that has that concern. I'll also note that Cassandra came in and said wearing a mask because she doesn't want to be seen, which I can't blame her. I understand. All right, anyway, let's move along. Where was I? Okay. Because, your buyer client's going to ask you all the time how much it's going to cost them to put up a fence. Nonetheless, let's build a fence. So a fence is being built to enclose a lot 125 feet by 350 feet. So 125 by 350. 125, 350. So far, so good? But listen, the fence has got to enclose the whole property. So we got to take into account another 125 on this side, another 350 on that side. Okay, so we're going to add all of those numbers together. We're going to come up with 950. If there will be one 10-foot gate, how many running feet of fence, right? Running feet of fence will there be? I'm sorry, minus 10. So the answer is C, 940. Yes.
Why do you have two squares?
Running feet of fence, that's all. That was just my way of trying to illustrate that point.
Gotcha.
Would you like me to take out that one?
No, that's fine. I thought
No, there's no trick. This is much more straightforward than anything else we've done. No question. Yes. And I unduly complicated it. I agree.
Let's make every question like that.
Absolutely right. Can I tell you that's the one that screwed me up when I was reading these? I went, well, the answer is 950 because the gate doesn't count as not fence or whatever, right? No, I was wrong. And then,
like second guess yourself that it can't be that simple, but it is.
It is, exactly. It is. And then, so then I go, no, the answer has to be 950 because I'm an idiot, right? And then I look at the answers and it's not on there. Shit. So now I don't know. Okay, so maybe you got to take the fence out or the gate out. All right. Anyway, that's how that works. Okay. All right. Our next question here is a profit and loss, right? Buyer pays $9,500 for 4 parcels of land. So let's start with that. 9,500 times 4. I want to make sure I do all the steps for you. It's $38,000. Okay, so this was the original cost. He subdivides them into 6 parcels. 6 parcels. And then sells the 6 parcels for $7,500 a pop. So this would be the amount after profit or loss, right? So if we're going to do TPR, the 38 really belongs over here. Right down to that, they want to know, what is the buyer's percentage of profit? Right, so this is the original amount that they paid. This is the amount after profit or loss. And that's the percentage of profit. Yes? No? Indifferent? Oh, look at that. Claire, I got a thumb, which is a proper finger to give. So, could have gone either way. All right, 44. Everybody good? You ready to move on? Okay. Property sells for $295,200. It has appreciated a total of 20% over the past 5 years. That means that the $295,200 is the amount after profit or loss. So $295,200 is my part. It has appreciated 20%. That means its present value is 120% of the original. I divide that bad boy into that other bad boy right there. What do you come up with? 246. Hold on 1 second, babies, please. All right. Sorry. Just had to check something here. All right. Let me get rid of this. I don't want to open anything. All right. Teacher earns an annual income of $60,000, and the teacher's spouse earns $2,400 per month. All right, you got to make sure that you're dealing with the same units of measure. We've said that a million times, right? How much can the couple pay monthly for their mortgage payment if the lender uses a 28% qualifying ratio? Okay, so 28% of their monthly gross, right? So let's take the $60,000 and let's make that into a monthly figure. So the teacher makes $5,000 a month. Her spouse makes $2,400 a month. So their total monthly gross is $7,400. Everybody good with that so far? Does that make sense? Okay. They can qualify for 28% of that amount for principal and interest payments. So 28%. Right, 2072. Right, come on, that was nice and easy, right? That was easy, come on. You're feeling good about yourselves right now. All right. If you purchase a lot, 125 feet by 150 feet, for $6,468.75.
Number 46.
I think you skipped numbers 46.
I don't want to do that one. Okay, sorry.
I didn't either.
I suppose we should. All right, sorry. Thank you. The buyer borrows $4,400. Oh, I hate this one. And I'll tell you why. It's not hard. It's just lots of steps to it. So the borrower borrows $4,400 and agrees to pay back principal and interest in 18 months. What's the annual interest rate if they pay back a total of $55.88? So they paid back $55.88. I take the $4,400 out of that. That means that they have paid $1,188 in interest. Right? Because this is the principal, and this is principal plus interest. So this would be my interest amount. Now, they paid back that amount over 18 months, right? So let's divide this by 18 months. That tells me that they paid $66 in interest a month. But interest rates are annual numbers, right? So I got to take that $66 a month, multiply it by 12. That gives me $792. So that's $792 a year that they pay. Does that make sense? So I get something on my screen. Principal of the loan is $4,400. 792 divided by $4,400 give us 18%. I did all the steps that time, Patricia. Did you get them? I did all the steps, every one of them.
I got them all.
Okay, good. All right, just asking. Questions, comments, complaints, anybody? All right. This is the one I wanted to do before, right? That's it. All right, so you purchased a lot, 125 by 150 feet for 64, 68, 75. 64, 68, 75. Okay. How much did you pay for per front foot? Right? Remember, the first number is always the front feet. So the front feet is 125. Now, how much did you pay for front foot? $51.75. Okay, make sense? Right, the trick of that question, if there's a trick at all, is always remember that the first number is the front feet. So in this case, it'd be 125 by, what was it, 150, something like that? Yeah, 125 by 150. This is always the front feet.
Do they ever do anything with the back feet or anything, or it's always front feet?
They will. There will. I think we did one before, right, where they tell you how much you paid per front foot, and they ask you how deep the lot was. Sometimes you'll see that.
Is the front foot number always the less number? Less
No. No.
Okay.
Because you might have a long, skinny lot, right, like that. And this would be our street. Right, so this would be, let's call it 350 by 75. How about that? So, but the first number is always the front feet. That's what they want you to get out of this. All right, read the question carefully. A buyer is granted a 90% loan for $340,500. They're not granted a 90% loan on $340,500. They're granted a 90% loan for $340,500. How much would a monthly principal and interest payment be using a loan payment factor of $7.16 per $1,000 of loan? These are horrible questions. They're not hard, but they're horrible. So let's see, we got $340,500. Okay. Loan payment factor of 716 per 1,000. So let's start by divide by 1,000. Right, and that gives us 340.50 times the payment factor of 716 equals B. I think those are horrible questions. I think they're horrible questions for you because I don't think you have any business doing that. I don't think I have any business doing it either, to be honest with you. But if they ask you, you got to be able to at least give it a shot.
Give us a second chance to make up our test if we screw it up.
Yeah, we'll see what my mood is like. Listen, I got to teach this damn class again like a week after you guys finish, okay? So I look forward to seeing you then, Laura. That's all I'm saying. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. No problem.
I was going to say, you'll let us sit in on it, right?
I can. Yeah, if you pay the money, absolutely. Yeah. People, I don't work for free. Sadly, I probably work more for free than I care to. All right, anyway. So last two, nice and easy, I promise. Calculate the total amount of commission. Oh, God, commission. Property sells for $61,000. And 6% is paid on the first 50,000. And 3% is paid on the amounts over 50,000. Does that make sense? Right, you paid 6% on the first 50 and 3% on amounts over 50. So 61,000 less 50 gives you $11,000 that you get paid the 3% on. Right, that's $330. You get $33.30. Yes, no? Okay. Moving along, people. Last one. Okay, a 50-foot by 100-foot lot has 2,400 square foot house on it. All right, so let's start with this. So I got a 50 by 100-foot lot. So 50 times 100. So I got 5,000 square feet. 50 by 100 lot has a 2,400 square foot house on it. Did that for you, Patricia. It contains 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Not bad. Not relevant, but not bad. What is the percentage of the lot that is not taken up by the house? So 2,600 square feet of the 5,000 square feet is not taken up by the house. Right? My total is 5,000. My part is the 2,600 that's not taken up by the house. And that gives me 52%. Ta-da! We're done with math. Listen, I got plenty more math questions. If you want some practice, I got them. We'll take care of you, whatever. The ones that I have are much easier. All right. All right, everybody good? Questions, comments, complaints on any of the things that we've talked about in this whole math deal?
Can you give us the math problems specifically on your exam? Like just change the numbers?
Oh, absolutely.
Like same question.
Listen, what I tell you, be here on the last day before we take the test, and I'll make sure you're fully prepared. Did I not say that?
You
Did I mean it? Have I ever lied to you that you know of?
Every single time we do math. Oh, this is so easy.
And then you'll be fine. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Listen, I'm telling you, my job is not to like mess you over and go, hoorah, you flunked. All right, my job is to drag you through this thing kicking and screaming and make sure that you freaking pass, okay? That's my job. So I'm going to make sure that you pass is my fondest hope. Okay, you really got to want it to flunk my test. I mean, we could probably work that out, but you really got to want it, okay? All right, go take a break, people. Come on back and we'll finish with appraisal stuff. Maybe I'll leave that up. You know what? While you're out, I'm going to reboot my computer one more time and see if I can actually get this other thing to work. So don't miss me. And not a chance, Mark. my wife bought caramel M&Ms. If you've never had caramel M&Ms, they're like crack. I assume, not having indulged in crack in the past.
It's like Girl Scout cookies.
Oh my God, I could eat a whole box of Thin Mints without even thinking about it. Done. Wait, when you come back on Tuesday, I'll get my little webcam out and I'll show you my house. My house will look like a warehouse of Girl Scout cookies. They're coming in on Saturday. The only thing that has saved me this year is the pandemic. All right, let's go. First of all, I'm really sorry about how terrible things have been so far tonight. I can't promise you they're going to be any better, but I'm really sorry. I was sitting with the computer last night, right? And all of a sudden, blue screen of death. I went, that's it, I'm done. I can't even get upset anymore. That's it, I'm done. I'm screwed. That's it. Sure enough. So I spent most of the day trying to get this computer up to speed. And you saw how well that worked, and we're getting there. So anyway, I apologize. You know, I try to do you better than that. But all right, let's go back to appraisal. I started to tell you, I think, and please forgive me if I'm wrong. We were discussing the concept of the comparative market analysis, right? And I said that when you do comparative market analysis, that's something that you do. And you do that to try and help your client figure out what a good price is to list their house at, that kind of thing, right? And you take into account recent sales, and you take into account what's currently on the market, and you take into account expired listings. Right, you use those things, you come up with some idea of what a good listing price to that property should be. I don't know. I'm on this page. I don't know.
302.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, then we talked about this thing called the broker's price opinion, right? And I told you that you cannot do that in Connecticut. Connecticut has made broker's price opinions illegal. There's always some kind of movement in the legislature by the realtor associations to not make them illegal, but so far there has been no such passing yet. Crap. Hold on, babies. Hold on, please. Okay, now I'm there. One more sec, please. Okay. And we talked about how, you can give an estimate of value for the purpose of marketing a property. You can give an estimate of value. You can even be paid to do so. But if you are, then you got to credit that amount back if they decide to hire you and hire you as their listing agent. All right, then we started to talk a little bit about the appraisal process. I'm not going to get too much into this, but there's various different types of values for various different reasons. For example, let me give you a few. No. Okay. So you may want, for example, something about market value. Right, so that your client knows how best to list their property, what a good price is to list their property. You may want replacement value. That's not necessarily your deal, but certainly somebody could you could work for an insurance agency or something, or do some side business with an insurance agency where you could do comparative market analysis for them so that they can come up with replacement value for a property for insurance purposes. their salvage value. Right? Like when your car gets all totaled, whatever, and what's the salvage, then that leads to a salvage value. And you've got insurance value. Right? What's the insurable amount? If you ever watch Antiques Roadshow, right? They'll tell you about what the what the value is and then what the value is for insurance purposes. Right? So those are various different types of value. Generally speaking, not something that you're concerned with, but it is stage one of the appraisal process, is figure out why you're doing an appraisal in the first place, right? What are you trying to come up with? Which of these various options, if you will, is the point, for lack of a better term, of your appraisal? And again, speaking in general terms, when you do these types of appraisals and you do this type of process, there's two types of data that you care about. You care about general data. Right? And general data deals with national trends, regional trends, neighborhood trends, things of that nature, okay? So bigger picture stuff. To be compared, of course, with specific data, which is specific to this property. Jeez, Mark. Right, so data on the property itself, the land, the improvements and such. Both of these types of data are necessary in order to come up with some reasonable market value for this property. Now, what we're going to find out here in a moment, we'll talk about this in some detail, is that there are three different ways to appraise a property, three different types of appraisals. There is the sales comparison approach. Sales comparison approach, which is what we just talked about, right? A comparative market analysis. That's kind of a sales comparison approach. Except, as we talked about, right? Appraisers only use sold properties to come up with their appraisal value. They only use sold properties. So there's a sales comparison approach. There's a cost approach. Right, what would it cost to reconstruct this property now? That's the cost approach to appraisals. And the third, you know very well, the income approach. Right, if it is an income generating property, what is the value of the property? Right, we've done a bunch of math on that. Nothing new there for you, sorry. And so what an appraiser technically is supposed to do, anyway, I wonder if in real life this is the way it happens. I doubt. But what the appraiser is supposed to do is come up with a value for each of those three ways, right? And then reconcile those three values to come up with a final number. And to do that, when they do that, you got this in your book if you really wanted to take a look at it. This is the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report. Okay? And it's horribly not interesting to me, but that's okay. Here's what I want to point out to you. If you look over here, right, this is our property. This is the property that we're appraising. And so here's three similar properties, right? This is the sales comparison approach. Right, that's the one that we really care about. That's the one that the appraiser really cares about. So they do this, you've heard it in your field, right? Comps, comparable properties, comparable values. So that's that. Right, and all sorts of different notes about how they came up with what they did. Why are these good comps, et cetera, okay? And then we move on. Let me go. I couldn't get it to the next page for me the way I wanted it to, so give me a moment. See if this is the one I want. Probably not. I think that's the same one. All right, there we go. All right, now if you look way on here, right, here's the cost approach. Sorry, it's not very easy to see, is it? Try this. Okay, so here's the cost approach to value. And look, not required by Fannie Mae. So if you got a Fannie Mae deal, they don't require that. And you know why? It's kind of useless, right? For these purposes, it's kind of useless. but nonetheless, it's on there as well. And as you see over here, there's also the income approach. So on the appraisal report, at least technically, right, all three types of valuation are provided. There's the sales comparison approach, there's the income approach, and there's the cost approach. We'll talk about each of them in turn. Okay, and then let me show you if I can come up with it quickly enough. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. I'm not seeing what I want, so. Anyway, at the end of the report, which I don't see why I'm not seeing, maybe this is it. At the end of the report, they do that reconciliation that we just talked about, and they come up with their values. Yeah, I don't see it on there. But anyway, that's the point. So they do those three different types of valuations, come up with a value for each, and then reconcile those three to come up with a final figure. Okay. I'll tell you some things that I don't think are terribly pertinent, but I got to talk about them. So I'm just going to run through them quickly. But what I'm about to say now is vitally important, okay? When we talk about value, we talk about market value. Sometimes I refer to it, because it's the way I learned it in law school, as fair market value. Fair market value is what a willing buyer and a willing seller would pay for the property if they were not related. They had all the time in the world to cut the deal, and there was no funky financing going on. Listen to me. Write this down. This is the appraised value. Okay, the fair market value. That's the appraised value. I'm telling you, you're going to see a question about appraised value versus fair market value versus this one, which is market price. Okay, the market price is the actual sales price. Obviously, potentially, two very different things. There are several. Yeah, go ahead. No, sorry.
Just to clarify, the appraised value is the same as the market value, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. When we talk about market value or fair market value, we're talking about the appraised value. So what an appraiser attempts to do is come up with the fair market value. And remember, as we talked about before, right? Remember that a bank will loan against either the appraised value or the sales price, whichever is lower.
So the buyer has to come up with a difference if it's higher?
If they can, yeah.
Can you say that one more time?
Certainly. I'll remember what I said. The bank will, that's what I remember now. The bank will, I'm getting old. I'm going to be 60 this year. Can you imagine? The bank will loan against either, right? So the bank's loan will be based on the lower of the appraised value or the sales price. So if you got a contract for 220 and the appraisal comes back at 200, then the bank will only loan against 200. Right, which means, yeah, you got to kick in the extra 20 grand.
So with like a lot of houses selling over the value of the house, the value of the actual house, a lot of these people, so if it's like 50K over the value of the house, they're actually coming up with the 50K.
It's a beautiful deal, isn't it?
Oh my God. Okay.
Because what's happening is now, right now, where I am particularly is people are asking 200, and then the potential buyer will come in and say, "I'll give you 220." right? So if they do that, then yeah, they got to come in with, and the property will appraise whatever. I mean, the point is, this is a good seller's market right now, particularly down here where I am. Knowing my luck, we'll put the property on the market just as the property tanks again. Whatever.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
So the bank will loan, wait, let me turn. The bank will loan whichever value or price is lower. So if the fair, so the fair market value will be different from the market price, right?
Could be. Doesn't have to be, but it could be, yeah.
So the bank will loan you the money which is lower from either or.
Yes, from either the fair market value or the sales price or the contract price.
So they compare both of those together and see which one. If it's the same, then they'll pay you the same. If it's one is lower,
Here's what happens. Here's what happens. You sign a contract to buy a house for $220, right? And then the bank goes out and gets an appraisal. You pay for it, but the bank goes out and gets an appraisal. And if the appraisal comes back at $200, then they will only loan you against a $200,000 value.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of these. If you're following along in the book, you can see there's all this nonsense in here about principles of value. And I'm just going to run through them and talk about them a little bit. There's a couple, though, that I think you should know. Principles. Okay. For example, so when determining value, right, these are some of the things that just kind of get considered, if you will. I'll put it down. What they call anticipation. Right? In other words, what's your crystal ball say about what's going to happen to the market? Right? It's anticipating that certain things will occur, right? I put my condo here on the market. It's because I anticipate a bunch of people are leaving New York during the pandemic and they're going to want to live on the shoreline of Connecticut right by the train, people, whatever, right? So anticipating that certain events will occur. Another thing that affects is a principle of value is change. Right? So it's the thought that economic conditions and the physical conditions of the premises will remain basically the same. Competition, which is the play, if you will, between supply and demand. Here's a couple that I think matter. Okay, and I'm not saying that because I got insider knowledge or anything, but these are the ones that I think matter, that I have seen questions about. Conformity. Have you ever driven down the street and you saw a house that just doesn't belong there? Right, that's conformity. Right, so is the land and the house, whatever, in conformity with its surroundings? Similar to that is contribution. You know how in some places that house that doesn't belong there, maybe it doesn't belong there because it's a really awesome house and all other houses are crappy? Well, that can have the effect of bringing up the value of the crappy houses. Conversely, the crappy houses can have the value of bringing down the value of the really nice house. That's what contribution refers to, right? How does the value of the part contribute to the whole? What are we doing for time? When determining value, the appraiser, whomever, determines value based on the highest and best use of the property. And I don't mean like, the best use being that we dug a hole in the ground and hit oil. What I mean is the best way that you could use that property under the present circumstance of the property itself and what the law will allow. Increasing and diminishing returns. You know how, I'm sure you know, right? If you want to get the best value, if you want to put some money into your house and get the best value out of the money that you put into your house, where do you put your money? The kitchen and the bathroom, right? You don't build an in-ground pool. In some communities, an in-ground pool actually brings down the value of the property. That's what this talks about, right? That you can overdevelop a property. You can improve a property to the point that it doesn't make any difference anymore. Oops. Plottage and assemblage.
Aren't the pros and cons of those kinds of things related to where it is?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I imagine
Absolutely,
like
right.
a pool would be an upsell in like Palm Springs.
Sure.
Okay.
But see, listen, my personal experience was always I wanted a pool until I got one. And then like it was more trouble than it was worth. I never swam in a pool. I had much more fun like trying to balance chemicals than I did actually swimming in the pool. But whatever. All right, plottage and assemblage. What this means generally is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So let's say you get 2-3 properties, right? And you combine them. That's called assemblage. And you make them into one big property. And the value of that one big property, this is called plottage, the value of that one big property is more than if you had sold them as 3 separate properties. Marjorie, how many miles you got in? Sorry.
Sorry.
No, don't be. I think it's great.
It's a long day.
I understand very well. I understand. All right, this one I've talked about a little bit in just a moment ago. Regression and progression is better stated here. This is a situation that I think I described it in terms of that contribution stuff. Regression and progression means how the surrounding properties affect the value of your property. Right, so your property values are affected by the values of the properties around you. So if you got a really nice house on a street that's full of foreclosures, then maybe you got a problem. And vice versa. Okay, and in the final analysis, where's all my old people? Does anybody here besides me remember Father Guido Sarducci on Saturday Night Live? Oh, thank you, people, right? Supply and a demand. Father Guido Sarducci was a character on Saturday Night Live. And he used to have this bit where he called it like the 10-minute college. And he'd say, I teach you everything you need to, everything that you will remember 10 years after you get out of college, I teach you right now. If you want to know Spanish, I teach you ¿Cómo está usted? If you want to know economics, I teach you supply and a demand. And I think of that every time I say that, supply and a demand. Okay. All right, let's talk about a couple of these different approaches.
Did you mention substitution?
No. I'll tell you why, because I don't care. Substitution. I'll talk about it in a little different context, but it really means like how much would it cost you to rebuild this property right now? Maybe even in a different place. Substitute this property for another. All right. I really got to try and get through some of this now. So let's talk about the various approaches that we discussed in just briefly earlier. So here's the sales comps, right? Sales comparison approach. Sometimes called the market data approach. Right, the couple of things that you need to remember about this is it takes into account only properties that have sold. So not properties that were pulled off the market, not properties presently on the market, only properties that were sold. And then what they do is they take that value, right, and increase it or decrease it depending upon various things. like if there's special financing terms, that may have an effect on the value. If there are, if you're not getting full-blown drop-dead use possession disposition rights, if there's an easement that goes across the property, if you have, you know, a desirable, I don't know, garage that has an apartment above it, whatever, like another one's don't. So they literally put a dollar value on each of these things and adjust the price accordingly. That's the sales comparison approach. So a dollar value is placed on all the different factors and adjustments are made based on that. I mean, that's how we come up with the sales comparison approach. There's some stuff here in the cost approach that you got to know, okay? So the way that the cost approach works is you take the value of the vacant land plus construction costs minus depreciation, and that's how you come up with the cost approach to property. Okay, so vacant land plus construction cost minus depreciation equals cost. Now, when we talk about depreciation, okay, sorry, let me fix that a little bit. Clearly, the new computer has not fixed my typing skills. When we talk about depreciation, we talk about several things. The first thing we talk about is physical depreciation or physical deterioration. So is the property in rough shape? Right, we all expect normal wear and tear, that's fine, whatever. Right, if something more than that, then that may need to be taken into consideration. So that's one factor that happens, that contributes to depreciation. Here's another. Get it? Functional obsolescence. Functional obsolescence is intrinsic to the property itself. Right? So it's that situation where you got that nice wood paneling in the shag rug. The 70s called, they want their house back. That's functional obsolescence. Right? That's what we call curable functional obsolescence. Right? You could just rip up the rug and take out the paneling, whatever, and you can make it nice. So that's curable functional obsolescence. Sometimes functional obsolescence is not so curable. Here's something you might want to remember. If you got a 4-bedroom house with 1 bathroom, that's functional obsolescence. Okay? It may be curable, it may not be. The evil twin, everybody okay with that? Capiche? Everybody all right with functional obsolescence? Keep that one in your mind, people.
Mark, could you say what would make it incurable again? I get the shag carpet and all that, but
take that 4-bedroom, 1-bath thing. Let's assume that it would take us so much time, effort, money, construction cost, whatever, to put in another bathroom that it's functionally impossible. That might be functional obsolescence. That might be incurable then functional obsolescence. No. External obsolescence. So functional obsolescence is intrinsic to the property itself. Functional obsolescence deals with things that are going on in the neighborhood or in the world or in the social scene or whatever, things that are beyond the owner's control. right? You buy the house in Detroit, all of a sudden all the car companies move out of Detroit, there's no jobs anymore, et cetera. That's external obsolescence. And the last appraisal thing is the income approach. We've already done enough of that in math, right? So I don't have to worry too much about that. The net operating income divided by the cap rate. And the cap rate, I can give you some definition on, but it's some sort of accountancy magic number that I don't understand. And that tells you what the value of the property is. Right, and as I said, I sincerely believe this. With all the stupid math that we've done, this is the one that might actually come in handy for you. Right, if it's someone who has a commercial property, an investment property, and that property is a income-producing property, chances are they have an accountant. The accountant could come up with a cap rate. You could put a value on the property based on the cap rate, right? Based on the net operating income of the property and the cap rate. And then again, just to bring all this home. Right, the appraiser technically is supposed to reconcile the sales comparison approach, cost approach, and the income approach, and come up with a bottom line value. Okay, let's talk a little bit of Connecticut stuff. Excuse me. We in Connecticut have our own little concerns with respect to appraisals. So let's talk a little bit about that. Nothing huge. Let's see. Run by the Department of Consumer Protection. Just like you guys. You guys are run through the Department of Consumer Protection as well. Right? You have a little different strata. Right, because you got the Real Estate Commission, which is part of Consumer Protection. The appraisal people have their own deal, the Connecticut Real Estate Appraisal Commission. And just like you guys, right, you have a definition of who needs to be licensed, right? And for you, it's like anybody involved in real estate activities. And then we have a definition of what constitutes real estate activities. All right. So same deal, right? In Connecticut, you must be a licensed appraiser if you make an estimate of value of real estate for a fee. For a fee. There are certain exemptions to that. For example, the tax people, when they do revals on the property. Just saw an article today. I think it's Berlin. Berlin's doing their tax revaluation like now for the upcoming October 1st grand list. Okay, you are also exempt so long as you are giving this estimate in pursuance of an agency agreement. In Connecticut, we have 3 different categories of appraisers. We have certified general appraisers. A certified general appraiser can appraise any kind of property, right? Commercial, residential, whatever the deal. Oops. A certified residential appraiser, guess what? But listen, in Connecticut, when we say residential, we mean 1 to 4 family. And then we got this animal that's called a provisional licensed appraiser. That's like an intern. Okay, for appraisal purposes, you can be a provisional licensed appraiser for up to 4 years. This is the entry level stuff. You have to have a supervising appraiser. And that supervising appraiser can have up to 3 provisionals. But look where we are. Let me see if I can get this going for you. So as you can see, this is a little dated. So some of it is in terms of like, what's happening in the market and stuff is very different now. But I dare say this isn't very different. So look, so here I got 2006. Here's the certified residential appraisers. We had 831 in 2006. We had 791 in 2015, almost 5% decline. Right, general appraisers, 6% decline, almost 7. Provisional appraisers, right? So those are the people in the pipeline, up and coming, down 88%. So remember I told you there's, a lot of opportunity if that's something that interests you. Overall, 30% decline in appraisers. So there's a great need out there if it's something that interests you. And just again, so you know, and I talked a little bit about this the other day, right? I wouldn't mess with the inventory stuff, but right, the demographics of appraisers, bunch of old white men, average age might well be over 50, and so on. Right. The point being, the appraisers don't reflect the clients. And that's an important thing, right? And so this is what makes a great opportunity for you. I'm sorry, Nicole, what do you got?
What is the best way to kind of break into this?
Well, let's talk about that, shall we?
Let's. Thank you.
Hold on.
Can you get a second opinion with an appraiser?
Sure, if you pay for it.
Crap.
What did you think? That you're going to have like some wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing with the appraiser? Go, yeah, I'm just looking to mess over that appraiser. I'll come do that. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Remember, these are the people that have to be licensed and insured, and so it's their assets on the line. Okay, anyway. All right, so here's how you get to be an appraiser, right? Hold on, I gotta make sure I got it done. I never quite get this right, so forgive me if I don't give it to you. But in order to be a provisional appraiser, you gotta have 75 hours of education. Provisional.
What unit on the red book is this in?
13. To be a provisional appraiser, you gotta have 75 hours of education. To be a residential appraiser, you gotta have a bachelor's degree. Okay, I wrote BS, but I don't think that it's necessarily a bachelor's of science degree that you need. And you also need 200 hours of work in. Yeah.
To know this stuff, like this is part of the test.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Here's the other thing that if there's anything, I suppose, this requirement right here to be a residential appraiser, you need a bachelor's degree. That was changed in 2015. You used to just need an associate's degree, but now you need a bachelor's degree.
Does it have to be specific, like a specific degree?
No. Go get your degree in English literature and get a couple of continuing education hours and go be a provisional appraiser. I encourage you to do that because we need appraisers that reflect what the realities of the community is. By the way, we need prosecutors that do that too. I feel bad. I got to tell you. So I sit in court, right? There's me, the judge, and the public defender, and it's like 3 old white men sitting there, dealing with people that I'm not in their community by a long stretch, and that's not right. Anyway, but it puts food on my table. All right.
As a provisional appraiser, if you get a job, then you said it's an internship, do they have to pay you?
Yeah. It's just like you in your first 2 years as a salesperson. You're basically an intern, right? You got to have somebody who supervises you and who oversees your work. Same deal here.
Okay, so you'll get paid to basically get those 200 hours you would need to become certified residential appraiser.
Well, I'll tell you this, if you don't, then move along. But yes.
Okay.
All right. All right, so you got to have a supervisor. You got to pay $25 to the feds to be part of their registry every year. Much like you guys, right? 2 years. Excuse me. They need, however, 28 hours of continuing education every 2 years. I think this is like you. They can take retiree status, get a retiree license for $20. Then if they decide they want to get back into it, they can reinstate. We do reciprocity, just like we do with real estate salespeople. We do reciprocity with appraisers as well. Bribing an appraiser is illegal. And remember when we talked about advertising, real estate advertising, and I said there's certain things you have to do, right? Your license status and who your supervising broker is and all that stuff needs to be in there. Well, same thing with appraisers, right? An appraiser has to contain a reference to their license number and what category of license they have, what state it was issued in, and when it will expire. That ends Unit 16.
You said something was illegal for appraisals?
Yeah, bribing appraisers. That's one of those things that, like, if I have to tell you that and you get it wrong on a test, I can't help you.
What does that mean?
Paying them off.
Paying them off?
Yeah. I'll give you an extra $500 if you can come up with another $100,000 of value for me.
I see.
So it's only illegal if you get caught, right?
Everything is, Anas. Everything is. I wish I could tell you otherwise, but I can tell you as a prosecutor. Hold on. No, fair house. There's leases. Okay. Let me see if I can get this rolling. All right, let's talk about leases. Now, here's the thing when we talk about leases, okay? We're talking about leases, Unit 17 in a big yellow book. And then we're going to talk about leases in Connecticut, Unit 12. And I'm going to tell you it's different, okay? I'm very afraid now.
Which one, Mark, which one do you think is most important to know? Unit 17 or Unit 12?
I don't know. I really don't.
Toss up.
I really don't know. I don't think you're going to find differences are too striking that'll mess you up. Like they're not going to say, give you, if you see a Connecticut specific question, you'll know it.
Okay.
Right? So you'll see as we go through. All right. So here's some general things that we'll begin with. So let me use a blue pen, see what happens, babies. We may have to reboot. Okay. Let me get through a little bit of this. We'll break. All right. So these are the parties to a lease right here: a lessor and a lessee. Right. So the person who rents out their property, they are the lessor, and the tenant is the lessee. Okay, in a lease, what happens is the owner of the property transfers their rights to use and possession. Right? Remember use, possession, disposition? The property owner transfers their rights of use and possession to this tenant in exchange for this thing that we call rent. Perhaps you've heard of it.
No rent in Connecticut right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe you won't get any questions about any of this. Who knows? Yeah, which is weird because the thing that I really need to tell you about that's very different in Connecticut and in the book is evictions. All right. Leases are subject to the statute of frauds. Peeps, if you don't know the statute of frauds, right, that it has to be in writing to be enforceable in court, you are screwed. Make sure you know the statute of frauds. In most states, ours being one of them, got to be a lease for more than 1 year. Has to be in writing to be enforceable. Okay, so think about that. A 1-year lease does not need to be in writing to be enforceable. A lease for more than 1 year does. I don't know. Unit 17, definitions, leasing of real estate. I'm just telling you.
328.
Okay, I'm just telling you, it's got to be in writing to be enforceable more than 1 year. Understand this, leases for less than a year are enforceable. Even if they're verbal, they are enforceable. Again, you know, any contract, because a lease is a contract like any other. In any contract, you know, if it's a verbal contract, an oral contract, it may be enforceable, but it's going to be hard to prove. It's going to be hard to prove its terms. So as your book points out, best to get it in writing. I can't argue that. All right. So let's talk about this term that you see up here, leasehold estates. Okay, when I say leasehold estates, what I'm talking about is the types of rights and such that you transfer when you enter into this lease arrangement. And so as the book tells us, there are we'll go with 4. There are 4 types of lease arrangements that we got to deal with. The first is called a tenancy for years. Now understand that when I say a tenancy for years, I don't mean that it's got to be years. Okay, what I'm saying is any lease that's for a definite period of time is a tenancy for years. Okay, so if you got a 6-month lease, tenancy for years. Okay, a tenancy for years has a stated beginning and end date. It has a drop dead date. Generally speaking, they do not automatically renew. And what I'm about to say to you is in the book, but it's a lie in Connecticut. No notice is required to terminate this type of lease because it has an end date. So it's over and we know when it's over. Now, that's not necessarily true in Connecticut, and I'll tell you why and show you how. So that's a tenancy for years, right? Any lease for a definite period of time. Then we got this thing called a tenancy from period to period, or sometimes called a periodic tenancy, and sometimes called a holdover tenancy. Right? It is a fixed period of time, but it does automatically renew. So that's like a month-to-month lease, right? You're there for a month. You pay your rent at the beginning of the month, you can stay for the rest of the month. You pay your rent at the beginning of the next month, then it automatically renewed. You got another month, and so on, for as long as it goes on. Right, there has to be a particular notice given in order to terminate that type of lease.
So what if there is no like actual written agreement? Let's say you had an written agreement for a year, and after that it was just month to month. I'm
going to tell you about that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, a tenancy at will. That's another type of lease arrangement. When you talk about,
Can I cut you off for 1 second before you keep going?
Go ahead, Claire. Yep.
About number 2, you said there's a written requirement for if you want to terminate that kind of a lease?
Yes.
So is there a certain time frame for that?
Oh yeah.
What it is in Connecticut?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, if you change the locks, you could very well be arrested. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. Let me tell you, the pendulum swings back and forth as to whether the law favors the tenants or the landlords. And it's been on the tenant side for a long time, and I don't see it coming back anytime soon. There is not enough rent money in the world to make me into a landlord. That's just me. All right, so that's periodic tenancy, right? Up for it renews itself. It's okay. So then I got this tenancy at will. When you think about tenancies at will, a tenancy, the easiest way for me to explain it is it's couch surfing, right? It's usually a verbal agreement. You stay with somebody because they let you until they don't let you anymore. It's usually informal, usually verbal, usually an indefinite length. And it dawns on me each time I teach this class that that's how I live in this condo. My wife owns the condo. I live here because she lets me. I'm a tenant at will. I live here with her consent. And if she gets tired of this, then I'm out. See you later, people. And finally, we got a tenancy of sufferance. A tenancy at sufferance happens when your legal right to stay in the property is terminated, but you stay there anyway. You are a tenant at sufferance. Okay, your
Like a squatter?
Say what? I'm sorry?
Is that like a squatter? Sort of like is that considered squatting if your lease is over but you stay?
Yeah. And remember this, babies. The law protects the possessor of property, not the owner. Okay? We've talked about that. How do you think we came up with adverse possession and prescriptive easements? The law protects the possessor, not the owner. Ask any of my darling students right here, right now. You ever try and evict a tenant? Yeah, the law protects the possessor of property, not the owner. So now to get back to Anas's question from just a little bit ago, here's how it works as a practical matter. Let's say I got a lease for a year, okay? So I am a tenant for years. I don't know what kind of symbol that is. I think it was going to be a check mark, and then it was going to be a star, and then it just became like a epilepsy. I don't know. So I'm a tenant for years. I got a 1-year lease with Anas, right? So I'm there for my year, and my year expires. But me and Anas, we're still getting along okay. Despite the 10-minute thing, we're still getting along okay. So the lease ends. I give him rent money for the next month. He accepts the rent money. I stay for another month. Now I'm a holdover tenant. I hold over after the expiration of my lease. But Anas, he's taking my rent, right? So we're good. We're good. It's a lease. I can stay for that next month. And then the next month I give him rent again and I can stay, whatever. This could go on forever. Let's say it goes on for a couple of years like this, right? I pay my rent every month. Anas takes my rent every month. We're good. Now the time comes, right? His grandchildren want to move into the property, so he needs to get me out of there, right? Mark, you got to leave. And I say, no, I'm not going anywhere. So Anas takes steps in order to end my legal right to be there. That's called a notice to quit. Oh, look at Lisa smiling. How many of those you served? Yeah, I know. A notice to quit in the state of Connecticut. A notice to quit terminates your legal rights to be there. I don't even hope to remember anymore, thank you, heavens, You got to give it to them a certain amount of time before the expiration of the lease. What was it, 10 days or something before the end of the month, and a month to month, and all kinds of crazy rules. But you can't give it more than 15 days or whatever, something stupid like that. I don't even remember. But the point being, the notice to quit, if properly provided to me, and it must be served by a state marshal, if properly provided to me, terminates my legal right to be there. Right? Anas wants to move his grandkids in. Mark, notice to quit. You got to be out by the end of the month. And I say, happily. Right? End of the month comes, guess what? Mark ain't going anywhere. Not only that, but you attempted to throw me out. I'm not paying you rent either. So, as a result of the notice to quit, my legal right to live in that property has ended. Okay? Everybody with me? But I'm still there. I'm a tenant at sufferance. Okay?
So
go ahead and ask.
So let's say you serve someone a notice of quit, right? And they end up staying. All right, and then they're tenants at suffering, right?
Correct.
How do you evict them? You just can't go and change the locks or anything?
Oh gosh, no, don't even say that. Oh my God. Listen, the person,
their pens outside.
We have a special prosecutor just for housing matters, okay? And she and I go way back, and she's tough. She will get you arrested for changing locks. Changing locks is a big damn deal, just saying. Now that I'm a tenant at sufferance, okay? Now you have the legal right to evict me. This is what gives you, that service of that notice to quit is what gives you the legal right to evict me. Now, I'm going to tell you this just on the side of you and me, okay? The best way to get somebody out of your apartment really fast is to go, dude, I'll give you $500 if you're out by the 1st. Okay? It's the best way to go. Otherwise, this process will take months and months. Am I lying, Lisa? I'm not kidding. Months and months this will take, and you will never see another dime.
I do cash keys probably a dozen times a month.
And that's a big number.
Hey, I have a question that would probably take up too much time of the class. So can I email you a certain scenario that's happening with my husband's uncle?
Sure. I'll make up an answer. That's fine. I'll make up an answer. You may find that I touch on it a little later on anyway, so let's see where it goes.
Okay.
All right, so that's leasehold estates. All right, those are the 4 types of leasehold estates that we're concerned with. All right. The book goes on to tell us a little bit about, what you need to have a valid lease. Let's see if I've got that here for you. Oops, sorry. Can I tell you, because you guys, we go way back now, right? I figured out that when I use a blue pen and it makes everything crash, but if I don't make the whiteboard completely big, it's okay, it works. All right, so here's what you need in order to bring my blue pen back now. It's going to screw everything up and just watch. It's going to make a liar out of me. So here's what you need for a valid lease, okay? Now, don't get too nuts about that because you already know this. We've talked about all this already, right? A lease is a contract. And so all the same things that we needed for a valid contract, we need for a valid lease, right? We need capacity. We need somebody who's of sound mind. We need a legal objective, right? In other words, you can't lease out a place that's not, prepared that has a certificate of occupancy, right? If you got that illegal basement apartment and you lease that out, that's not a legal objective, right? So you're not going to be able to enforce that contract. You got to have offer and acceptance, and you got to have consideration, right? We got to be talking about the same thing at the same time, the same amounts and all that.
I have a question. So when you go objective, if you have a 3-family home and there's a basement that's remodeled, does that play part in it being livable? Or so meaning the city has to come and tell you that you could rent it out?
Yep. So let's say this happens, right? You rent it out and I don't pay my rent and you go to evict me, you're going to end up paying me.
Okay, because that basement was never approved.
Yeah, that's correct. It was never certified for occupancy, so it's been an illegal rent. You will never be able to collect the money that I owe you. It'll take you 4 months to get me thrown out if you're lucky, and then I'll end up suing you, and you'll have to pay me.
So in that regards, can you change the locks on that one?
No.
You still can't change the locks on that.
In no circumstance can you change the locks on somebody.
But it's a legal unit, though. I mean, as a tenant, they knew that too, right?
It's correct. Let me tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story. Back when I lived in New Britain, right? One of my neighbors used to hit on my mother all the time, okay? But he also helped us out because you know me, what do I know about swinging a hammer, right? Nothing. So he used to come out and help us out with the car and whatnot. So anyway, lonely old guy. So he gets the attention of some lady and moves her into the house with him, okay? And I go, dude, don't do that. You will never get to get her out. And so then they get in a fight. He wants to throw her out. You cannot change. It's your house that you live in and you own. You can't change the locks. You have to get her evicted. Take you months to get her evicted. And throughout that time, she's perfectly entitled to stay there.
Well, what if you change the lock and the person just leaves and they don't say anything?
As long as the housing prosecutor doesn't find out about it, right? That's what we talked about a minute ago. It's not illegal if you don't get caught, right?
Okay.
I don't ever suggest anybody proceed on that, but nonetheless. All right. So those are the things that you need for a valid lease, right? You need the capacity, you need a legal objective, you need offer and acceptance, you need consideration, all of the stuff that we talked about for contracts in the first place. This is what your book says. I'm not so sure I agree, but your book says that in order to have a good lease, good written lease, it should have the proper property description. Right. I don't think you necessarily need that same sort of full-blown property description that you would need for a sale. I think street address is probably enough, but you have to identify the property with particularity.
Hey, Mark, not to kind of continue to harp on that with the lease, but let's say you have a tenant, right? Can you go after them to reclaim the previous rent or?
Absolutely. We'll be talking about that. Yes, you can, and we'll be talking about it. Yeah. All right. Property description. All right. So here's how it works then. The lease itself gives possession of the property to the tenant. And it comes with the covenant of quiet enjoyment. That means that the landlord will not mess with the tenant and their rights to live there. That's the covenant of quiet enjoyment. Right? And even if that's not in the lease, that's still in the law. That's what you get. Right. In other words, even though the lease may say that the landlord can show the property when the property is being put up for sale, they can't do so in a hugely unreasonable manner that interferes with the tenant's right to live there. So that's the covenant of quiet enjoyment. As we talked about, right, the lease gives over the rights to use that property. And if that use of the property is restricted in any way, then that has to be in the lease as well. Do any of the other old people here remember the TV show Psych? No, nobody? There's a show about a psychic detective agency, right, where the guy wasn't a psychic at all, but he pretended like he was. He was just like really smart and could notice things that people wouldn't necessarily notice. Anyway, so he writes this book, right? And they have this, it was a huge hit. And so everybody comes over to their office. They're going to have a party for this new book, whatever. So the landlord shows up and the landlord says, "Where'd you write the book?" And he says, "Right here in the office." "Great, you owe me more rent." Right? Because you can only use the property as an office for your detective agency or whatever, not to write a book. So if the use of the property is going to be limited in any way, then that can have an effect on the lease as well. It's got to be set out in the lease. The term of the lease needs to be precisely stated. Right? We need to have, I'm sorry to use the term, but it's become my habit now. Got to have a drop dead date in the lease. I'm going to say these words right now, and then I'm not going to say them again for a while. Don't ask me any questions. Security deposit. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about security deposits. Connecticut has some very strict laws on security deposits. So we're not going to talk about it now. We're going to talk about it later. Security deposit is an amount given up front, right, in order to secure the landlord in the whole tenancy arrangement. Okay. Hold on, I'm missing something. Oops. Talked about that. Oh, shoot. Sorry. About that. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I didn't get as prepared for this part as I should have. All right, let's talk about... I thought I had it in here. Hold on one second. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'll get to that. All right, I guess not. All right, so improvements on the property. Neither party is required to make improvements on the property, okay? However, the property must be in a habitable condition. Shoot, in a habitable condition. Shoot again. Habitable condition. There we go. A habitable condition. Improvements can be made by the tenant with the landlord's permission. And similarly, we'll talk about accessibility when we do fair housing. But the short story is you can't discriminate based on physical disability. And you have to make reasonable accommodation. Now, what that means in terms of housing is this, for the most part. If you got a 3-family house and you have somebody who has a physical handicap and they're unable to get up to the 3rd floor, you don't have to put in an elevator. You have to make a reasonable accommodation. The tenant themselves can make a reasonable accommodation, right? If the tenant wants to live on the 1st floor and you go, fine, live on the 1st floor. And the tenant says, I need to put in a ramp. You can't say no. What you can say is, then you need to pay me more security deposit so I can take the ramp down when you're out of here. Okay? Now, you may not want to take the ramp down when they're out of there because you may be able to rent it better if it's handicap accessible. But the law requires that you make reasonable accommodation. That doesn't mean that you have to knock out walls and make the doorways bigger.
Do you have to pay for the ramp, or the tenant can pay for them?
Tenant pays for the ramp. Right. The point is, you can't say, sorry, you can't live here because you can't walk or whatever. You're wheelchair bound. You can't live here. Right. You can say, absolutely, you can live here. Do what you need to do. Right. All right, as we talk about this habitable condition thing, right? The landlord's got to make repairs to keep the place in a habitable condition. And technically, actually, the tenant is supposed to return the place in the same condition as they got it, with the exception of regular wear and tear. Now, your book makes this deal about destruction of the premises. This is not necessarily a residential real estate concept. This is more like, frankly, in agricultural properties and such. That if, let's say, you rent a place, right, and then you have to, build a barn or some other thing, whatever, I don't know, or you rent a place with a barn or a couple of barns, and one of the barns burns down, you still got to pay your rent for the barn that's still standing. I'm not all that worried about it. Right, technically as well in residential real estate, if this is so stupid. If part of the premises burns down and it's still habitable, then the tenant has to pay for rent for the part of the premises that is still habitable. Don't let your tenants burn candles in the premises. Marjorie? Hi. I don't mind that you're not muted. I just want to know if you got a question. I want to make sure I address your question. That's all. Given the look on your face when I told you you were not muted, I will assume you do not have a question, and I will move on. No problem.
Mark, I got a question.
I bet you do.
Sorry.
Don't be.
Does that go as well for like insurances? Like you said, I was saying to my husband when you said that, I said to my husband, I go, that goes for Sarah too, our daughter, as a joke. I said, she's our tenant. She can't burn candles in her room. You know, she's a 20-year-old girl like that.
Absolutely. No, and frankly, what you should do is evict her if she does.
But would insurance, like if part of the house burned down, how does that go with insurance? Will they cover you to move out while that part of the house is being fixed, or is it like does it have
Depends
to be
on what kind of insurance you have, Laura. Depends on what kind of insurance you have.
Okay.
All right, listen, and all you people who plan on renting out properties to make $1 million in us, you also have to have this thing that we call business interruption insurance, which is insurance. It's not cheap, but it's insurance that if you're not making money out of the property anymore because it burns down or whatever, then you will continue to get monthly payments from the insurance company, right? Because listen, the fact that the place burned down is not going to stop your mortgage from still existing. Right, so there's an animal called business interruption insurance.
Would that cover pandemic shutdowns?
No.
Don't know. I suppose it depends on, again, how the policy is drafted. Right, there are some places that I was just reading an article today. There was a huge rain in last week, whatever, and it overflowed sewers and such in Newington. And now people have like feet of water in their basement, and they're going to the town going, what's the matter, you people? You didn't have a good enough sewage system or whatever the deal is, right? A water drainage system. And it just cost me $16,000 to fix my basement. And the town of Newington said, gee, that's a shame, but that's an act of God. That's not our issue. And I thought, that's why they had to put in bigger pipes in Farmington, just for that reason. Anyway, so it depends on the insurance and how the insurance is drafted. But you know how the insurance people are, right? They will they will do whatever they can to not pay. And that's why it's important. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. You'll have to excuse my tangent right now. But remember when we talked about you as a real estate agent, and I said, you have the right to be supervised. You need to, your supervisor needs to supervise you. Don't just cut you loose on the world. You can't have that, right? And then one of the things that you have to do when you get a job is you need to you have to have the guts, people, to ask your employer to be, if you're covered under their business insurance, if you're covered under their errors and omissions policy, right? That's like malpractice, right? Are you covered under their realtor insurance policy? And the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no. Either way, no matter what that answer is, you got to have the guts to ask, are you an additional insured? Then if you screw something up, I almost dropped the F-bomb right there. Then if you screw something up, that insurance company will do everything in their power to say, not our problem. Sorry, that's not covered under the policy. Right? Remember, only things that you do within the scope of your employment are covered. Oh, that wasn't in the scope of your employment, will say the insurance company. So you, individually, human people, need to have your own separate insurance policy that will pay in the event that your realtors does not. You got to protect yourself. Sorry, that's just me. Anywho, coming back to the lease thing. Assignment and subletting, right? It's up there. So pleased that my blue pen works. I'm just going to keep using it. In fact, I'm going to make it a heavier grade blue pen. That was it. Now I screwed the whole deal, didn't I? Yep. I was rolling, people, wasn't I? I was rolling. All right, I got to shut down and kick back in again. Why don't you take a break? All right, take a break and I'll come back on.
So close, guys. So
I know, right? I know. For me too, Anas. Don't give me. I'll be right back. Go take a break. Well, I guess I got the feeling just a little too good about myself there. All right, let's roll. I'm further behind than I want to be. You guys realize we only have like 2 substantive classes left, right?
And I'm really scared.
So if I'm going to take next Thursday, 1 week from today, to prepare you for this test, then I really have 1 more day to finish this book. So it's going to be a little tight for me. With my wife's permission, maybe we'll have class on the 9th. What do you think? You weren't doing anything anyway, right? You didn't even know we didn't have class on that day until I said it, right?
I was thinking that before, but I was thinking we should have canceled today and done it on that day, but no, we shouldn't.
We already have plans, Laura.
Yes, Shannon and I already have plans. We're going out to dinner.
When?
On the 9th. With our prospective boss.
After class, right?
No.
At 9 o'clock at night, we're going out to dinner. The place closes at 9. No, if you want to have class, seriously, let us know.
Don't bother me. Listen, sometimes I do an optional, test review class on the Tuesday.
I might be in for that. Shannon, maybe we change ours to Wednesday. I'll text you.
Depends on my mood. All right, not to worry. Promise, not to worry. All right, let's move. All right, sometimes, see, I'm feeling all full of myself now. I'm going to try again. Sometimes you got to record the lease. There are certain requirements of recording leases of commercial properties in certain amounts of times. Just be aware. Sometimes they got to be recorded. Sometimes you want to record them. Sometimes notice of lease has to be recorded. Sometimes you, happy real estate agent, want to record a notice of lease because that helps protect your commission, right? Particularly if you're getting future commissions for doing nothing but collecting rents on that property. Ow! Talked about this, and this is what messed me up. This is out of place. Apologies. Yeah, that should be elsewhere. Put that over there somewhere. I'll deal with it next time. All right. Subordination, non-disturbance, and attornment. Here's what that means. These are clauses that go into leases and into mortgages, okay? And what they do is basically protect the tenant and protect the landlord in many cases. What they say is that if the property gets foreclosed on, so long as the tenant is not in default under their lease, then the bank who forecloses will keep them there as a tenant. And the tenant will recognize the bank as its landlord. That's attornment. Okay, so it happens again in... Never mind. Shoot, hold on, sorry. It happens, again, as part of a lease and as part of a mortgage in order to protect both landlord and tenant, so that if the property is foreclosed upon, the tenant will recognize the foreclosing bank as its landlord, and the landlord will recognize the tenant as a tenant so long as there's been no default under the lease. Now, what you will find in some circumstance is that the banks don't even realize it, and they're just not like, hold on. Banks the banks will foreclose on a property, not even realize there's a tenant there, and the tenant lives there rent free until they figure it out. Again, don't comment on that. Okay. Hold on. A little background noise going. All right, last thing we want to talk about, no, not the last thing, is options. Okay, we talked about options and option agreements, right? And we talked about that when we did the test. We talked about options. And the way that we discussed them was you pull the property off the market for a while. Okay, wait, I think it's Maria Segovia. Maria Segovia, mute, okay? I can't seem to mute her, and she needs to be muted, and she doesn't realize it. Maria! Maria. Killing me. All right, never mind. So an option is when you pull the property off the market for a particular period of time for consideration. Okay, an option is a separate contract. It has to have separate consideration. Hello, young Shannon. How are you? Glad you could make it tonight. What's on your pajamas? Are those pandas? What are they? I can't tell from here.
I don't know what they are. Candy canes?
Candy canes.
Candy canes. Oh, nice. Nice. Those are your Christmas jammies, huh? Mm-hmm. Favorites, I assume? Maria Segovia. You with me? Look at me. Look at me. I can see you, Maria Segovia, in your sister's computer. Mute yourself.
It just said that she left the meeting on my thing.
Well, she's in twice, so she probably had to sign back in. Yeah, she probably had to sign back in. And so when she signed back in, it probably wasn't muted. There we go. That's not much better. It's okay. Anyway, so an option is a separate contract, right? It's in some cases, we talked about an option contract as where a seller will pull the property off the market for a particular period of time for consideration, right? I'll give you $500 if you leave the offer open for 10 days or whatever. That's an option. Oftentimes, well, I shouldn't say oftentimes, there are times where a lease will also contain an option to purchase, right? It's an optional option. I guess all options are. But in this case, it does not require separate consideration. Okay, the rental payments serve as consideration both for the tenancy as well as for the option.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. When it comes to options to purchase that are within the lease, they don't require separate consideration. Okay, consider that the rent serves as consideration both for the tenancy and for the option. I could argue that that's not true, what I just said. So bear that in mind. All right. So that's all we need to concern ourselves with about sort of the legalities of the lease. Let's move on to types of leases. All right. Here's some types of leases. Let's talk about them in turn. Well, now I lost my cursor here. There. All right, types of leases. I'm not going to harp on this too terribly much. So I got a gross lease. In a gross lease situation, the tenant just pays one amount and that's it, right? All of the charges associated with the property are paid by the landlord. So if this was a residential lease, you would advertise it as all utilities are included. Okay, so again, in a gross lease, the tenant pays one amount, a fixed amount. And the landlord then pays all of the charges associated with the property. Okay, and we contrast that with this net lease. In a net lease, the tenant pays a certain amount, but they also pay some of the charges associated with the property. And when I say some of the charges, what I mean is taxes, insurance, and utilities. You may have heard the term triple net lease. That's what we're talking about. Taxes, so the tenant pays rent, right? A particular amount of rent, plus they pay taxes, insurance, and utilities.
Plowing and lawn care and everything else, because that was what my last lease was for my business before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it really adds up.
It truly does. And you better have some handle on that up front, right? Because listen, the way the landlord looks at it, and I'm not against anybody making their money. You got to make your money, right? And so they're counting on that, I don't know, $1,500 that you pay every month in rent. They're counting on that as pure profit, right? That just goes in their pocket, and they're entitled to that, right? So that means that everything that takes away from that $1,500, you got to pay. That's what a net lease is all about. All right, and so then we got a percentage lease. And you already know percentage leases because we've been dealing with it in math, right? Remember how we had those problems that would say they pay $1,000 a month plus 2% of gross profits in excess of $50,000 or whatever, right? That's a percentage lease. So a fixed amount plus a percentage of gross income. And that usually happens in like retail type leases. I show everybody's being muted, people, and yet somebody is not, and it's driving me nuts. And I love you guys like crazy, but I'm gonna kill somebody. Can't say that. All right, let's move on. So then I got this variable lease. Right, variable lease right here.
Hey, Mark, I'm with you. Could you unmute everyone and then mute everyone once again?
I tried. I've done it twice now. Hold on, I'll try again. Hold on. See, no better. Everybody hear me okay? Maybe it's me. Okay, wait, who do I show? Anas, obviously you're talking, that's fine. Who else do I show?
Maybe you should take attendance this way. And whoever it is, kick them off.
I already got attendance, sorry. All right, let's see, maybe we can shame them, whoever they are. I'll tell you who I think it is. It's terrible to say. So look, people, look, I'll show you. Right, here's everybody, and everybody's muted, right? That's me, obviously. Everybody else is muted. Is anybody seeing something that I'm not?
See what you're talking about. I'm still seeing the whiteboard.
Oh, are you? Oh, sorry.
Is there someone, Laura? It looks like that microphone's on.
I just turned it back on, but I'm going to shut it off again right now.
Yeah, Laura's pretty good about that. Yeah, Laura's pretty good about that.
You were talking, sorry.
We get done tonight. Sorry?
I said it's just your blue pen talking.
That must be it. Yeah, that must be it.
Or maybe because you logged in twice or re-logged in, it's...
I suppose that's possible too. Yeah, I suppose that's possible.
So who's chewing on the screen? Do you see anyone chewing on the screen?
No!
I was chewing, but
No,
I
I
was muted.
see it. I don't get it. I don't know. I'm just going to have to struggle through, people. I'm sorry. What can I tell you? All right, variable leases. All right, so variable lease is just like a variable rate loan, okay? There are increases to the lease from time to time. And you can have, it can be based on anything. So your book talks about, as you can see here, a graduated lease. A graduated lease means that there are certain fixed amounts that the lease increases at certain times. have an idea. I have to throw somebody out of the meeting. Tried that already. That didn't work. Hang on. Nope.
If you want, I'll volunteer.
Get out of here, you.
I'll check out if you want.
Yeah, I think you've all checked out. I'm not concerned about.
Bad we're not in class together. It's too bad we're not in class together because we really do all get along so good.
Okay, wait. All right, everybody else mute. I just threw somebody out, as you can see. I just want to see if it works. Apparently not. It's not who I thought it was. All right, let me just say then for the public at this point, please make sure you're muted. If you're in more than once, please just get out and come back in just once. And that'd be very helpful. I appreciate that. All right, graduated leases, fixed amount, going up with whatever the time frame is, go up monthly or quarterly or yearly or whatever the case. That's a graduated lease. Goes up a certain amount at certain intervals. An index lease, the amount that it goes up is tied to a certain financial index, right? The prime rate or the Wall Street Journal prime rate or the Treasury bill rate, right? So the lease will go up in a percentage amount equal to the T-bill rate on the first day of the month of October, whatever. Good, that still works. That's an index lease. A ground lease is. Any of you guys ever watched the TV show Gold Rush, which is a show about people fixing large quantums of machinery and digging up the dirt and never finding any gold? All right, that's a ground lease, right? You lease no, that's not quite right. That's more the next one, oil and gas lease. So this is where ground lease is more like a 55 and over community, right? Where I move into a lot in the 55 and over community and I build the house, right? So I lease the land, but I own the house. I don't know how I move the house if I want to, but nonetheless, that's a ground lease, right? Where you lease the land part and then you can build on it. Oil and gas lease is just what it sounds like, right? It's a lease where that's the Gold Rush example. It's a lease of the mineral rights, which you can lease separately from the land itself. So I can lease you the right to dig under the land without selling you the land. Right? And generally speaking, those types of leases involve a payment of a commission. Then we got the lease purchase, right, which is really just a sort of a lease with an option to buy, but usually structured in such a way that the rental payments are credited against the purchase price. And that's not a drop dead thing, right? It could be different. And then finally, we got the sale and leaseback, which again, we talked about when we did the test. Right, for that circumstance where someone has property and a great vision for the property, but they don't have the money to execute that vision. So what they do is sell the property in order to gain a big quantum of cash, right? And then they lease the property back and they execute their vision for the property using the money that they got with the sale. And again, that may happen in a circumstance where an investor is not happy just taking a mortgage on the property or is not happy with the security. And so the investor requires some additional type of consideration. So it's structured as a sale and leaseback. The investor will actually purchase the property and own the property, lease it back to the original owner who can then build or do whatever it is they want to do for the property. Okay, I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying that it's out there.
So you will no longer be owner of the property,
Correct.
but you still want to live in it. So that's
No,
why.
it's not a living thing. It's a commercial. It's a commercial thing.
Okay.
Hold on, I lost my place. There we go. All right, let's talk about how leases end. Leases end when they're over. That's what I mean by termination. Okay, fully performed. The time frame has ended. That's the end. Now, in a perfect world, in the real world, well, in the perfect world, what happens is the lease ends on October 31st. We all shake hands on October 31st, someday when we can shake hands again, and we all go our separate ways. Okay, that's not what happens in real life, but that's what the book talks about when it talks about discharge. All right, again, the book says, and this is not true in Connecticut, that no notice is required. Right, and technically that's true because the lease ends when it ends. I don't have to tell you. It's over. You know, you signed the lease. It says October 31st, done deal. Let's see. Yeah, a couple things about that, I suppose. All right, so, you know, it's the same circumstance. I don't like you, you don't like me. We just agreed that we'll walk away. We can do that in a lease as well, right? A mutual cancellation of the lease. If the tenant gets a better deal and they want to move out and the landlord allows it, that will also terminate the lease. But the landlord doesn't have to. Who just coughed just now? Who just coughed just now? Who? Come on, fess up right now. I want to know. Nobody's going to see that. Look at that. You rat bastards. Nobody's going to do it. Look at that. Sorry, Cassandra, you got a little kid with you. I apologize. Sure, they never heard that sort of language.
What are you doing?
I feel like someone's doing this on purpose.
Yeah, me too. I feel like we're all being gaslit here. I really do. I feel like we're all being gaslit. Oh, had a bad day, did you, Mark? Ooh, I got something for you.
Someone just said, "What are you doing?" Were they talking to their kid?
No, they were talking to their husband, who happens to be me. Yeah,
That's
it was my wife yelling at me. Yes.
Oh, okay.
She's trying to get me to take better care of you people. This is the downside of teaching from my house. All right, anyway. So the tenant can surrender the lease, and if the landlord accepts it, that's fine. The lease is over. Okay. On the other hand, let's say the tenant leaves, right? And the landlord does not accept it. The tenant abandons the lease. They're still liable for rent, right? So if they leave early, they're still on the hook for the rent. I think I shamed whomever it was enough because I'm not hearing anything else anymore. Public shaming, that's my deal. I take these I have to take these courses on how to teach. And they always say, oh, never do that, public shaming. And I go, are you kidding me? Oh, just sets things up beautifully. If somebody knows that you're just like me, right? If I know if you call me out, I'm going to be called out, then that's okay. I'm going to do the same to you. Yeah. All right. So anyway, if the tenant abandons the leasehold, they're still liable for the rent. Now, let's talk about that for just a moment. I'm going to talk about it in a little different context here in just a second. But the concept that I want you to know is this one, mitigation of damages. Let's say that I got a year-long lease, right? Excuse me. Let's say I got a year-long lease, and after 3 months, the tenant abandons the property. Okay? They still owe me for 9 months rent. That's the way it goes. But the law says that a landlord can't sit on their rights. Okay? The landlord cannot wait for 9 months and then sue you for 9 months rent. The law requires that the landlord mitigate their damages. In other words, lessen their own damages. So the landlord has an obligation to go out and try and re-rent the property. And they got to try and re-rent the property for the best amount that they can rent it for. If it's less, it's less. Right? They can sue the tenant for the balance. If they're renting to this tenant at $1,000 a month, they can only, get a new rent for $850. Well, then the former tenant has to make up the balance, theoretically. I say theoretically because being able to sue someone and being able to collect from someone are two very different things.
Can you get out of your lease in Connecticut by paying 1 month's rent?
No.
Okay. You can't.
It's got to be a liberal California thing, right? It's got to be a California liberal thing. Come on. It's got to be a Jerry Brown kind of rule thing. Come on.
Probably. It's like an unwritten rule.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I'm not. No, I'm just going to go straight up. No, we don't do that here. All right. All right.
But it can be done though, right? If the landlord agrees.
If the landlord agrees, yes. Yes. But there's no law that says, you can sign up for a 12-month lease and then, give us a month and see you later, pal. All right. So that's the concept of mitigation of damages, right? A landlord is under the obligation to lessen their own losses, right? So they need to re-rent the property. They need to do whatever that they can do to lessen the amount of their damages.
If the landlord wants you out early because they want to sell, are they allowed to breach the lease in that regard? No, unless you agree.
Yes. But because there's this whole subordination, attornment, all that stuff plays in there as well. So there may be an opportunity where, I'll put it this way. Let's say you got a 3-family house you want to sell, and you sell a 3-family house, and the person who buys it just picks up the 2 tenants or whatever. That's okay. Nobody cares about that. That's a good thing. Right.
Then you would have to have a separate lease contract with the new owners.
No, because there's this attornment thing that says that the new owners will recognize the tenant as the tenant, and the tenant will recognize the new owners as the landlord.
Okay.
Sometimes leases are terminated by operation of law. So sometimes, depending upon how they're drafted, foreclosures and condemnations and such may terminate a lease. Eminent domain may terminate a lease. Bankruptcy will likely terminate a lease. All right, let me move on. Let's talk about breach of the lease. So what happens? So my first instance here, I have landlord remedies. So what can the landlord do if the tenant doesn't pay the rent or whatever, right? Breaches their lease in one way or another. They have a couple of options. And the first one is called actual eviction, right? And in this state, we have a special term for it. We call that summary process. Right, and we call it summary process because it's quick and easy and fast. It's not, but that's what we call it, and that's why. Right, that's just the Connecticut term for actual eviction. So in the case that the tenant does not comply with the terms of the lease, and I'm not just talking about non-payment of rent, it can be any of the terms of the lease. The landlord may sue to evict them, and the landlord may also sue to collect any monies they are owed, be that because they didn't pay their rent, be that because they messed the property up, excuse me, caused damages to the property and such. Oh, this is a test question. And so, I'll probably talk more about it later, but when the landlord goes to court and evicts the tenant, when that day comes and the actual day that the tenant has to get out comes, the landlord can call up the marshal, right, Lise, and have you come and actually move their stuff out. Listen to me and write this down. That's called a writ of execution. Okay, it executes the judgment. Now, talk to my girl Lisa here. She's going to do that for free, right? Yeah, this is going to be a very costly process. So they will literally come and move your stuff out. They can put it on the curb. They can put it in. Are you required to put it in storage now, Lisa? Is that
required to be put in town storage, and the landlord has to pay until we drop it off.
Oh,
what? I'm sorry. So hold on. So landlord.
Go ahead.
Landlord have to hire marshals to come pay.
With bonded
Marshals.
movers. They have to be a bonded mover. We box it, put it on the truck, $1,000 there, and they have to pay until it's unloaded. The landlord does. The municipalities used to do it, but it was a cost problem and it was a way of mediating it. So the landlord would drop off.
And there was also a time where you could just put it on the curb, but you can't do that anymore either.
The sheriff, that's what we used to do.
Yeah. Yeah, eviction is a terribly costly process, people. When I tell you this, and I said before, I mean it, right? The cheapest way to get somebody out is to give them $500, tell them to leave. Anyhow,
at that rate, you might want to. It's cheaper to do it 1,000. You know,
you might want to pay. You might want to kick out. Well, listen, start low. All right. Let's talk about what happens if the landlord breaches the lease, because sometimes that happens. And the example that I have here is if the property becomes uninhabitable, right? What if the landlord refuses to do repairs to the property becomes uninhabitable. If the landlord refuses to pay water and the water gets cut off or whatever, right? That renders a property uninhabitable. And what then can the tenant do? The tenant can sue for damages. They have the right to sue for money. And they can leave. They can abandon and not be held liable to have to pay rent for after they leave, right? As they would normally if they just abandoned for no good reason. But here's the thing. They can't stay and then say, well, it wasn't habitable. No, by definition, if you were living there, it was habitable. So if you want to make a claim that the place was not habitable, you got to leave. All right. A moment ago, I mentioned that the pendulum swings back and forth between landlords and tenants, right? And for a long time, the landlords had the upper hand. And so the legislature didn't like that. So they swung the pendulum back the other way and came up with this bad boy right here, the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. And when I say uniform, I say that because it's been enacted in a lot of states, not all states, but a lot of states. Just so that you know, it's a very pro-tenant legislation, right? That's the kind of law that says you can't lock somebody out. You can't change the locks. We already talked about that. The last thing, fair housing. I don't want to get too much into fair housing. We'll be talking about housing in the next chapter when we look at fair housing. But the point is, well, there's lots of points. I haven't talked about that yet. People should be able to live wherever the hell they want to live, okay? Without regard to, things that are not appropriate to take into account, like your gender identity, let's say, or your race or your religion or whatever the case. And so Federal Fair Housing Act deals with those things, right? And basically protects people from discrimination that way, right? It protects people with disabilities. It protects people with children. It says that you can't, let me use this example. You can't have all the old white men living in this building and everybody else living in the other building, right? You can't segregate people that way. Anyway, so that's what fair housing does, right? Protects people in their housing choices. We'll be talking much more about that. All right, let's talk about Connecticut now. Crap, hold on. There we go. I'm going to say something that's not going to make any damn sense at all, okay? That may be commonplace for you now. That's fine. Connecticut's housing laws are what we call a comprehensive statutory scheme. Now, that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but this is what it really means. It means you've got to follow the law to the letter, right? Or you lose. So, for example, when we talked about having Lisa, right, having to provide a notice to quit at the end of the lease period in order to be able to evict somebody, if you don't follow the right time frames to the letter, you lose and you got to start all over again. That's what it means when I say Connecticut has a comprehensive statutory scheme with respect to landlord and tenant law. All right. Connecticut's statutory scheme follows the statute of frauds. So, leases for more than 1 year need to be in writing to be enforceable. Similarly, leases for more than 1 year need to be recorded on the land records. You don't have to record the whole lease. You can record a notice of lease, right? That just basically lays out the basic terms.
So, Mark, do you have to record every year? Let's say you have a year-to-year lease tenant, right? Do you have to record it? Is it considered longer than a year?
If it's a 1 year renewable lease, I would tell you that you got to record it the second year as well, right? Because then technically it's a new lease for a year.
But you don't have to record it if it's a 1 year lease.
If it's over 1 year, you do. Okay, so leases for over 1 year have to be recorded or notice of lease recorded.
Right, but that's my question though. If my lease is 1 year, I didn't record it with a landlord, or I'm sorry, with a.
All right, so I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. So so when it renews, then it's another 1 year lease. So no, it doesn't need to be recorded. It's not over a year.
Got it.
Which benefit you have?
Say again, I'm sorry.
As a landlord, which benefit you have from recording the lease?
I don't know. I don't know that it's a benefit, but the law requires it. That's all I'm saying. The law requires that it be recorded. I don't know if let's say you didn't, right? You got an 18-month lease and you didn't record notice of the lease. Can you not foreclose or can you not evict somebody? I don't think so. But the law says that if you have a lease for Connecticut law, if you have a lease for over a year, you got to record notice of the lease. So just know that for the test, I guess.
Do you have to pay to get the property or the lease recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't remember what recording fees are anymore. Yeah, it's been so long now. It'll cost you like $25 to record it. All right. Leases in the great state of Connecticut, right, have to be plain language leases. In other words, if you go to Staples and you go to get a lease from the shelf over there at Staples, you got to be really careful because Connecticut law says you can't use all kinds of legalese in your lease. It's got to be in plain language that normal humans understand. There's another thing with the statute of frauds, right? That says contracts for amounts over $500 need to be recorded. Need to be in writing. So a lease may fall into that category too. I don't know that it does, but it might. So I guess the upshot is make sure that your lease is in writing. Okay, we use all of those terms that we talked about before, right? We got a periodic tenancy, a month to month, right? That kind of thing. We got holdovers. We got, estates for years, right? Which is a specific term. We use all that stuff here as well. there are certain provisions that it is illegal to include in a lease in Connecticut. Okay, and the short story to describe them is any advanced waiver of rights. In other words, you can't have in your lease that the tenant waives their right to get a notice to quit. That the tenant says it's okay to change the locks if I don't pay rent. You cannot do that. Let's talk about security deposits. Here we go. Connecticut says that any amount that you get in excess of, wait, let me make sure I got that right before I say it. I want to say it right. Yeah. Any amount you get in excess of the first month's rent is considered a security deposit. Okay? Any amount that you get in excess of first month's rent is a security deposit. You cannot have more than 2 months' rent security deposit. So that's where you get first, last, and security deposit.
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Any amount that you get in excess of the first month's rent is considered security deposit. So if you take an amount from somebody that's first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, that's okay. But those last two, last month's rent and security deposit, those are actually both security deposit.
If they do all three, first, last month, and security deposit, can those all be the price of first month's rent? Like that's 3 months' rent? So if they use the security deposit as like $1,500, say your rent is.
I don't know that a landlord would do that, Patricia, to be honest with you.
Well,
I think
in California, they do that all the time.
Well,
it's
that's
like $8,000 up front, and it kind of like weeds out all the people who don't have all this free cash.
well, there's something to that. Yeah, there's something to that. But no, we don't look at it that way here at all. And they are really strict on the security deposit stuff. Wait until I give you some more of the rules here. It gets even worse. Okay, so
I thought what she just asked was exactly what you said they could do. The security deposit can not add up to more than twice the first month's rent. Did you say that?
what? Who are you talking to?
I thought that was what she asked. The security deposit can't, like, say rent is $1,000, just to make it easy.
Mhm.
They can do you pay your $1,000, then you pay your $1,000 security deposit, then you pay your $1,000 last month's rent. Is that what she just asked?
Yes, that is what I was asking.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I thought that was what you
Yeah,
said.
then I misunderstood you. Yes, that's what we do here. Yes,
Okay, but it can't go any higher than
that's correct.
twice. So it can't be more than 3 times the rent total.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the deal.
One more question.
No, wait.
Okay.
Any amount in excess of 1 month's rent is a security deposit. The security deposit cannot be more than an amount equal to 2 months' rent.
What about when somebody pays 1 year or 6 months in advance?
That's a security. It's a security deposit.
But is that illegal?
Yes. I know. I just took a training on it, and they try and get around it, and you can't.
So if
Right?
somebody wants to
I'll
pay
tell
a year
you
in
who
advance,
gets hurt by that. Who gets hurt by that are people who have disabilities, right? Because they have, like, conservators or something who will have to pay that much. It's a mess. It's a mess. But yes, they cannot. Theoretically, you cannot pay in advance. Because any amount that you take in advance is a security deposit, and the security deposit cannot be more than an amount equal to 2 months' rent. I love this talk, man. This happens every class I give on this. People go nuts. Wait, it gets worse. Here's where the book starts, because I think it's hilarious. I'm sorry, Elise, you got something?
No.
I just saw you weren't muted, that's all right. So this is what the book says, and I think it's hilarious. A security deposit is not required. You don't have to charge somebody a security deposit. Now, whether that's good business or not is another story, but nonetheless, don't feel obligated.
Can you turn down a tenant if they don't provide security deposit? Or is that discrimination?
Okay, here's what I'm going to say about that. Now, this is going to come up a lot next time, but here's what I'm going to say about that. You can always discriminate against people that can't pay.
Fair enough.
Okay? But that's about the only reason. But nonetheless, we'll go to that. We'll get more into that. If someone is 62 or older, you can only charge 1 month security deposit. Go ahead, I'm listening. Patricia, you're horrified. Why is that? I don't understand.
Is that just because the retirement they're on like a set paycheck?
We protect our old people here in Connecticut, We don't kick them to the curb like they do in California. We protect our old people, make sure they got a place to live.
I just got challenged down to 65 years.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Lisa, you go first, and Marjorie, I'll come to you, I promise.
In Connecticut, if you're 65 and you live in a mobile home, you cannot be evicted.
Yeah, I'll bet that's true. I like that too. I like it.
Do they
Go ahead,
have
Marjorie.
restrictions here? Like dog breed restrictions? Is that a thing?
Yes.
And they're enforceable?
I suppose, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can make that part of your lease and you can evict somebody based on. It's the thing to be careful of. Be careful of those little yappy little shit dogs, all right? Don't worry about like the pit bulls and the Dobermans and stuff. Don't worry about them. Worry about the little yappy ones. They bite your ankles. They're the ones that get you in trouble. I know. I've been in trouble. Listen, so we're watching my father-in-law's dog. He's got a big-ass dog, right? We live next door. Did I mention live next door to my father-in-law? So I'm watching the dog because I'm an idiot. I bring the dog outside because I feel bad for the dog because it's a big dog and we live in a little condo, right? I got the little yappy dog. He's got the big dog. I tie the dog up, the big dog, outside. Somebody pulls up, some neighbors pull up, whatever, and my little dog starts yapping. And that's what gets the big dog upset. That big dog takes off, snaps the rope like it's not even there, and bites the guy right in the ass. Cost me $5,000. Mm-hmm. I called up my insurance company and I went, hypothetically, if this happened and she said these words, Mark, don't tell me. Don't tell me, Mark, if you I said, it wasn't my dog. It was my father-in-law's dog next door. Mark, if you tell me that, you will never get insurance again.
Who has custody of the dog is responsible.
What's that? Yes, and that's me. It's me.
Who has custody of the dog, strict liability, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Cost me a ton of money.
So two things, right? One, can you put in your lease that no pets are allowed, right? That's
absolutely
legal.
Yes, absolutely. On the other hand, if they have like an emotional support peacock, you may have to allow that.
Absolutely. But the
you
other part of
not
that
kidding,
question,
right? Because there was a case in New Jersey where somebody tried to take their peacock on an airplane. I'm not kidding you.
Yes.
I want to change my seat. I do not want to sit by the peacock. Go on. I'm sorry.
I think I lost my question.
My fault.
No, you're good. So the second thing is, let's say your tenants have a dog, and let's say that dog decided to do what your dog decided to do, right? Is landlord liable or is the tenant?
I think the tenant is primarily liable. I think you can be held liable too.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the not being able to charge someone over 62 more than, would you say, 1 time their rent?
Mm-hmm. So you can get 1 month rent and 1 additional month of security deposit.
So my question is, if that's a rule and then you can discriminate against somebody who doesn't pay it, isn't that kind of like a loophole to discriminate against an elderly person? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. But I can tell you that, well, again, we're going to talk more about the discrimination stuff next time, but for the most part, the law says that you got to treat everybody equally. equitably. All right. So that is to say, and we'll find out more next week. And it's worth noting, right? If you're gonna do a background check, you do a background check on everybody. Right, you don't do background check just on the old white men who show up because where have they been, right? You don't do if you're looking for a certain credit rating, you get a credit rating on everybody, not just, certain people who you like or you don't like, whatever. If you're going to charge 2 months security deposit, you charge 2 months security deposit. You can't pay, you can't come in. Right, you're going to charge 1 month security deposit. I'm sorry, you're over 62. I'm still going to charge you 1 month security deposit. You can't pay? Sorry. Right, so you're not discriminating because they're old. You're discriminating because they can't pay, whether it's 1 month or 2. All right, let me continue.
Good question. Me. Okay, so this is about the elderly. So if they do have the 2 month security deposit, can they pay even though they're over the age?
No.
Really?
Yes, really.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of oh shits coming up here. I'm telling you, there's more. Wait till I tell you that it's illegal to discriminate against somebody who's on Section 8.
Yeah.
Right? When the landlord goes, no, you know what? I'm sorry. Section 8, they got a lot of rules and stuff, and I just don't want to follow those Section 8 rules, so I'm sorry, we don't do Section 8 here. The answer is, you're lucky you don't get reported, pal, because you're going down. End of story.
So I have a question in that regard. Can you say...
Not hypothetical, I can tell. Go ahead.
No, it is. Honestly, it is. So if you had, I haven't rented an apartment forever, like since I was 20. If you had say I went into, I had an apartment I was going to rent. I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. Well, I don't wish I did. You said that, but
go on. I'm with you. Let's go. What?
So if you have an apartment for rent and you have a person come that you feel is not desirable for whatever reason, how do you get around? Like, can you? And they walk in the door and they look at it and they go, "I want it right now." Can you say, "Well, I have someone else coming later to look at it as well"? And like, how do you?
Sure, you can. You say whatever you want to say.
Okay, so. And then if you gave it to
here's what you say. You say, sure, but first I have to run a criminal background check and a credit check, and then I'll let you know. And you do that with everybody. All right, let me continue because I got to get through some of this stuff. I'm sorry, babies. I love you, but I got to get through some of the stuff. All right, so far what we've decided is first, last is security deposit unless you're 62. Okay, I think we got that so far. You have to keep the tenant's security deposit in an interest-bearing account, okay? And you got to pay over the interest once a year on the anniversary date of the lease. And so you send them a check for like 12 cents. I'm not kidding you.
Can you state that in the lease that you're not going to put it in the interest-bearing account?
You could say that, and then you could go and get fined and have legal troubles, yes.
You have to pay back 3 times the amount.
3 times the amount. If you don't do what I just said, you pay triple the amount, yes. And there are fines and penalties for you.
Oh, so hold on. So what about if it's restricted by your religion that you cannot?
This is what they call loophole people right here. These are loophole people. Look for the loophole. It's restricted by your religion.
Absolutely.
Tithing and you don't have the what? I don't understand.
Absolutely, it's forbidden. It's forbidden. So can you put that to collect interest?
You're not collecting it. You're not collecting it. You're not collecting it for yourself. You're collecting it on behalf of someone else. I see where you're headed, but you're not getting the benefit. You're giving it to somebody else.
So that means you have to create a separate account for that.
You got to work the loophole with the religion thing, not with the law thing. All right, let me continue. I got to keep going. Come on, I got some stuff I got to do. This is hilarious, man. If you fail to return a security deposit, $250 fine. You don't pay over the interest once a year, $100 fine. Now, listen carefully. If your tenant is late on their rent, they forfeit their interest for that month. So there's like 3 cents to your benefit that inures to your benefit, which I think you have to give over to your religious institution. And I'm just saying.
Well, that's the thing too, is, I mean, I've actually never had, I haven't lived in that many apartments for a long span of time, but I've never had a landlord send me a check on the anniversary.
Can I tell you that, I hate to say this, but the reputable...
Because I didn't know.
Exactly, right? And that's what they count on. People they count on that all the time, right? I can tell you, I had a student who came to me at the break, right? Not here, in a separate class, and went, oh my God, Mark, I've been turning down Section 8 people for as long as I can remember because I don't want to mess with Section 8. Are you telling me that I've been violating the law? Yes, I am. Straight up I am. And the only thing that has saved you is nobody's gone to the CHRO and said, hey, this guy turned me down for being a Section 8 person. That's the only thing that has saved you, right? As I said on a previous lecture, when I talk to the people from Department of Consumer Protection, the Real Estate Commission, and I go, what's the deal with this? They go, it's a complaint-based system. Unless somebody complains, nothing's going to happen. So that may inure to your benefit.
That 3 times the amount might be on 10 cents.
There you go, right? Is that going to really deter you?
Right.
All right, let me go on. You got to pay back the security deposit within 30 days of the end of the tenancy. And if you don't pay back the whole deal, you got to tell them why. Failure to do so, they can recover double their security deposit. Again, something that tenants don't know. And yes, as we've already discussed, the security deposit can be used for unpaid rent.
With the court's permission.
What do you mean?
You have to ask the court to use the deposit for unpaid rent.
Well, I'm talking about even in a non-eviction situation. Right, so is that so? All right, never mind. No, I did not know that.
The executive order right now stands we can use half of it for rent.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm not even paying attention to the executive orders because that just threw everything in such a mess.
Prior to that, you can use it for repair or non-payment of rent, but you have to have permission from the court to remove the money out of that account and put it in yours.
After an eviction. So we're gone. All right, well, there you go. I stand corrected. I learned something as we go.
It's only about a 2 or 3 year old. They changed it.
Huh. Let's talk about rules. Here's the one thing that you got to know about rules, okay? You can have rules. You should have rules. You should have people sign off on the rules that you have. But you cannot change the rules midstream. Okay, if people have their pets there and then all of a sudden you want to have a no pets rule, you can't just like spring a no pets rule on them. Unless everyone consents, you got to wait until the end of the lease term.
If somebody has pets and they are in your building and you want to instate that at the end of their lease, they can't get grandfathered in. Like that would be their lease is over and now they either have to move out or get rid of their pet.
Right.
Okay.
Landlord has the right to come in on reasonable notice for reasonable inspections at reasonable times. Nobody knows what the word reasonable means, but we know when it's breached. We know when it's not reasonable. All right, we have this concept here. Where's Patricia? Because this one will work for you. You'll like this one. Called constructive eviction. All it really means is that if the landlord fails to keep the place up, fails to maintain habitable living conditions, then it's as if you're being evicted, right? We call it a constructive eviction. And that means that you can leave and you can be, I mean, it'll be challenged, but you may be relieved of your obligation to pay rent after your abandonment of the property. All right, tenants' obligations. All this is in the red book too, and I don't want to go too hard into it. I don't think it's necessary, but what are the tenants' obligations? The tenants' obligations are to not crap the place up and to pay rent. You know, follow reasonable rules, give notice when notices are required. Nothing extraordinary. Tenants may also be liable for criminally if they intentionally damage the property. We got a law against that. All right, we've already discussed at some length the concept of mitigation of damages, right? In the event that the landlord has to evict someone or someone abandons the property, the landlord is under an obligation to lessen the amount of their own damages. Right, which means they're under an obligation to re-rent the property, or at least attempt to do so. Right, they can't just sit back for 6 months and think they're going to collect that 6 months rent once the lease ends or whatever. Landlords can start an eviction 9 days after the rent is due. So you got sort of a built-in grace period. I'm going to tell you this. I don't want you to go crazy on it, okay? But I think the rule's hilarious, so I want to tell you about it. It talks about that. Hold on one second. Let me find where I want to leave off here. All right, let me go back. So if the tenant makes a complaint to the town, let's say, right, about the state of the property, whatever, the landlord cannot raise the rent in retaliation. All right, let's go down here to tenant recourse. So what happens if the landlord doesn't live up to their obligations? So if the landlord doesn't do something they're supposed to do, then what's supposed to happen is the tenant gives them notice. Dear landlord, you failed to do thus and such, whatever it is, right? And then the landlord has 15 days to be able to take care of that, to cure, as we say in our field. And this is a big one. If that same problem arises again within 6 months, the tenant only has to give them 14 days notice. If it's not fixed, you can leave. 30 days, within 30 days. If the landlord fails to provide essential services, right, water, electricity, and such, the tenant can do so and deduct it from the rent. Or they can leave. All right, let's move down to summary process. Summary process, again, that's actual eviction, right? That's when we do the eviction thing. Summary process, the eviction action begins with this notice to quit. Right, again, the notice to quit is what terminates your legal right to be there. Once that notice to quit is served and the time frame in that notice to quit passes, you are then a tenant at sufferance. And that's what gives a landlord the right to evict you. So the notice to quit has a date on it that says, "Dear Sir, Madam, your right to live here ends on this date. Please be out by then." And then when you don't leave, you're a tenant at sufferance, and the court, you can go to court to be evicted. There is no self-help eviction in Connecticut, which is to say you can't go changing the locks on anybody. You must go to court to evict someone.
How long does an eviction stay on your record?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. It's a credit question, and that changes from time to time, and I don't know. I would venture a guess up to 7 years.
Mark, I heard that in Connecticut you cannot do evictions during winter months.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, yeah. I mean, you could do it, but I'll tell you what's going to happen is the court's going to say, okay, and here's the date that you have to leave, April 30th.
Right.
Right, for the eviction that you brought in November. Because then what happens is the tenant goes to court and they say to the judge, "But judge, my kids are in school and I need to stay and it's cold out and I got nowhere to go and whatever." And so the judge will give a date for you to leave. Right, and that could be months from now. The judge could also say you got to pay rent up until then. And then you won't, and then it takes further court action to get you out of there. This could be a very protracted process.
Right. And you can't get the marshals to evict them till April 30th, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. Unless you can go and get the court to change their mind. Right, and then you go to court and you go, "But Your Honor, I got a mortgage payment that's due." And the courts are I mean, you know, they're not mean. They understand that you have obligations as well. Once the eviction happens and you get an order for eviction, there's an automatic stay, okay, which means a court order cannot be enforced for 5 days. So there's an immediate 5-day stay. So this eviction's been going on for what, 4 months? You finally get a court judgment and it's immediately stayed for 5 days. You can apply to extend that stay, but then you got to take what you would otherwise pay in rent and put that in escrow with the court. How often is that going to happen? Once that stay of execution is done, you apply to the marshal, you take your writ of execution. Right, this is called ejectment. That's when they literally come and move you out of the place. And that's cheap, as we talked about. By the way, consider this. I'm sorry, Anas, this is for you, babe. Let's say that you're smart and you say, "You know what? I'm going to do what that guy said during that class that I had to take. And I'm going to form a limited liability company. And I'm going to put all my rental properties into the limited liability company. So the only exposure if somebody slips and falls, breaks their head in my apartment building, whatever, that 3-family house, that exposure will only be to the limited liability company." Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, you think to yourself, and you're smart. So that's what you do. Then you get a tenant that doesn't pay and you want to evict that tenant, right? And you think, "Oh man, now I got to call a lawyer and that's going to cost me a ton of money. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it myself." When you go to court and you try to evict that tenant from that apartment, you are now representing someone else. You are representing your limited liability company. And that, my friend, is the unauthorized practice of law. So you could actually suffer consequences from the judges of the Superior Court who discipline lawyers will discipline you, even though you're not a lawyer, because you were acting as a lawyer when you shouldn't have been. ugly stuff. So yes, if you're going to put all your stuff in a limited liability company like we talked about, right? Then you got to hire a lawyer to do an eviction.
Yeah.
Just be aware. No, there's no loophole. You think I'm going to loophole hiring a lawyer? No, there's not. You hire a lawyer. All right.
The loophole is you can do the notice to quit by yourself, but
that's probably true. Yeah, but you can't go to court. That's the issue. Is you can't go to court and represent someone else in a court of law.
Got it.
You can't.
On the same topic, Mark. What's your number again?
I'm sorry, I don't do private law. See, I'm a state's attorney. As a state's attorney, I cannot do private practice. I can't represent people anymore. So I do this. It's not as lucrative, I'll say that. But it's a lot more certain, I'll tell you that too. I remember talking to a buddy of mine one time, and we were just talking about what's your hourly rate? Oh, what's your hourly rate? And he told me his, and I went, really? You're charging that? And he went, yeah, what I'm collecting is not that. Yeah, there you go. I understand. All right, let's see. You cannot evict old people, elderly, or physically disabled people except for good reason. And one good reason is they don't pay. I mean, that's a valid reason for eviction. Municipalities that have more than 5,000 rental units have a fair rent commission that regulates rentals and charges and such. And if you want to raise the rent, I
didn't understand that.
They regulate the amount of rent that can be charged. Yeah. Now, this deals more with like low income type places. Right, if you got the really nice upscale apartments like they just put up in New Britain, because, we're a really nice upscale kind of town, you know what I'm saying? They're not regulating those rents. It's part of the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, the CHRO.
I wouldn't imagine there's that many that have 5,000 units now.
You might be surprised.
Really?
I would have thought that myself, but you might be surprised.
Okay. That seems huge.
It does. I agree. It does.
I believe they're creating one right next to University of Hartford on Albany Avenue. Right next to Hartford.
So they're creating apartments?
Yeah, they're creating the low-income apartments, like brand new. They're just standing up right now. And I think that's going to be around.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to look. That's the other place that pays me to do this. If you're interested, I have a textbook as well. It's called Forensic Evidence in Court. I always thought textbooks were a scam until I got a royalty check. All right.
You wrote your own textbook?
I contributed to a textbook. I wrote several chapters of it, yeah. I teach a class in forensic evidence. I teach a class in technology and law. I teach a class in electronic discovery.
So you're a teacher, but like a lawyer on the side.
Yeah, I kind of look at it that way too. I spent a lot of my lawyering during the daytime practicing and preparing for teaching you guys. All right, last thing.
Oh, quick question though.
Yeah, go ahead.
You teach technology and law. You're having trouble with the blue there.
Yeah. How do you think I got there? I'll tell you what happened was I blew up my last computer while I was playing with technology and law. That's what happened. Anyway. All right, last thing. Non-resident landlord registration. If you got an absentee landlord, right? If you got an out-of-state landlord, there has to be registered with somebody, I guess Secretary of State, or maybe in the local town, maybe the town hall. You got to register a literal, actual, physical address, right, for the landlord. That takes care of leases. All right, so listen, on Tuesday, we're all done with math and practice tests, right? So we got the full boat 4 hours thing. We're going to start with fair housing. That's going to take us a fair amount of time. I'm going to try and get through the rest of the book. And it's not impossible. I only have 4 chapters left. And frankly, 2 of them should probably take a half an hour all at once. So we will go through those 4 chapters. And then next Thursday, we'll do test prep. Right, and we can talk as well. Once we get done with the test prep stuff, let's see how you're feeling about things. And if you're in a position where maybe you want a little extra help or want a little extra review, or frankly, if I don't get through what I need to get through and we want to continue with the Tuesday after the Tuesday before the test, then let's talk about that. I'd certainly be willing to do so. All right. Questions, comments, complaints, anybody?
Comment, Mark, that's really awesome that you're willing to do that for us. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll probably charge the school for it too, but no, I'm just kidding. I'd be happy to do so. No big deal. No big deal.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
All right, guys. You have a good weekend. I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good one.
Thanks,
No,
Mark.
thank you guys for your accommodation this evening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night.